Hey, if you're new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It would really mean a lot to me, and honestly, it'd make my day. If you already did, thank you so much. Oh, and by the way, if you like listening to fan fiction, check out my other channel. The link's in the description. Deadly Drinking Pirate by Darren. Ace was wondering about that sake he stole from those pirates before allowing his little brother Luffy drink it when they became brothers. And now, Luffy has gained a new ability, one that defies the laws of devil fruits and yet makes him even stronger than before. Watch this drunk-proof pirate become the king of them all. Mature Luffy dual devil fruit Luffy harem.
What do you mean that you aren't coming? Usopp shouted off his disbelief and annoyance. Despite being equipped with hunting and catching gear from the King's Gourd, you will be able to find the South Bird easily. Exactly. That's why I am not coming, and neither is Robin. Luffy responded firmly. Then he turned to Nami, his girlfriend. Don't worry, honey. I will be a good boy and I trust you to keep Sanji's hands off, right? Nami tried to get jealous or at least suspicious, but her heart swooned by Luffy's devilish grin. And somehow, everyone missed that Robin had a very small blush that she was hiding with one of her hands. I get it. With Robin's ability, it will be too easy. Zoro then spoke up. All she will have to do is see the stupid bird and toss it down from whatever it is roosting down to the damn ground. That was gruff, expected of Luffy's male first mate, but still made sense. And personally, taking it easy will hurt worse than a salted fresh wound. Come on. Soon enough, there was just Luffy and Robin out in the open. Aren't you a bad boy? Inviting me out here alone with you? The mysterious woman tried to tease Luffy, but he won't have it. Hands off, I just want to give my crew a handicap for them to overcome on their own. Luffy grumbled. Besides, you seem to be the type to love to learn. So, is there anything you would like to know? I am willing to share. Robin giggled. Are you sure that you want to open to a stranger such as myself? Luffy didn't even face her. Her only response was the air getting thick, to the point of being hard to breathe for Robin. Is that a no? Luffy spoke of thin patience for those who give complicated answers to simple questions, or else don't answer at all. Robin felt a shiver down her spine, somehow scaring and amusing her. Pardon me, I didn't mean to offend. Luffy at least had half a smile in his frown. I do want to ask about you. Me too. Both pirates looked up to see the old man himself from the half house. I will like to know just what the hell happened in that crap town before you and your gang blew it up. Cricket continued and got comfy on the grass. I want to know too. You did send a messenger telling people like me to not get involved. Robin added her own 2 cents. Just what is this, Blackbeard, that fells your every fiber with hate? He committed a true sin. Luffy actually answered, baffling his audience. When you are a pirate, you sail free of the rules set forth by the government and are hunted by the Marines. When you are all alone on the vast ocean, you can only turn to your comrades and your fellow pirates. One, Cricket rubbed his goatee while Robin looked indifferent. And Blackbeard used to sail under another captain, my superior, Edward Newgate. Both of them lost color on their faces. Blackbeard sailed under the Yonko, 4 emperors. Shirahige, Whitebeard, Luffy nodded, inwardly amused by their expressions. You have connections with the strongest man in the world. Robin somehow looked like a ghoul and Luffy continued to smirk at it. You missed a few epic phone calls I made before leaving Alabastra. I even talked with my childhood idol, Shanks. Luffy added and held in the urge to laughter when a couple of faces got in his own. Even Akagami, red-haired, Shanks. Luffy nodded and then got grimly serious. The point I am making is that Blackbeard sailed under the flag for 20 years and showed his true colors when he stole the Yami Yami no Mi. Dark fruit, from one of his fellow sailors. Right before stabbing him in the back, Cricket and Robin had settled down since Luffy looked like he needed someone's head to pop off given how his hands itched. I can't stand such bastards who breach the trust pirates have for each other, and just jump ship afterwards. And how do you know all about this? Cricket finally spoke calmly. I mean, you talk like you were there when it all happened. All living beings are the same, old man. Luffy cut him off. We don't speak, eat, drink or even move to scratch an itch on your nose, unless we tell ourselves do so. Those thoughts usually go unheard, but I have cracked the code years ago. It is not a complete process just yet. Cricket suddenly felt like he was sitting on a stool with a soft top, with his arms on a counter and facing a bartender with Luffy's face. but I have gone a long way in perfecting it. The bartender even had Luffy's voice and offered a glass with a large ice cube and fresh beer sizzling inside. Cricket then took it without even thinking and drank the beer, much to the delight of his taste buds. Here, in my bar, all you have to do is to enjoy a drink and share your troubles. Everyone has come here for the pleasure of it. Luffy, as the bartender, then directed Cricket's attention to how the counter stretches both to the left and right, endlessly. And the old man saw not only Robin but other people and even animals sitting on their own stools talking to identical bartenders. "You are one hell of a pirate, kid," Cricket could only say before asking for another whiskey and told Luffy about his story. After he was done, all three of them were suddenly back in the clearing. "Thanks, kid. I feel much better now." "Not a problem, old man," Luffy answered. "I promise you, we will help you settle things with Noland. No one deserves to live out here, all alone." Cricket looked away, mumbling about something in his eye, instead to hide the tears going down his cheeks. "We're back." The ice was broken by an amusing sight. A gang of pirates running out of the woods, covered in dirt and bruises, carrying a restless bird along. "And we finally caught the South Bird." Luffy smiled and walked up to the bizarre-looking bird, grabbing it by the legs. "Hello you. You are grouchy and I can understand that. But we need someone like you for a very important matter." Luffy talked to the South Bird with a tone that was both creepy and friendly, scaring even the bird itself. "Once you help us, you can fly back to the jungle and feast any more fools that trespass in your home. Until then, you are stuck with us. Better get used to it or else we will feed a cracker." The South Bird completely quieted down and was too scared to protest anymore. XXXXX The following morning finally came. "Everything ready?" Luffy asked Nami and Alvida. Both are going over the checklists. "Everything fastened down, supplies secure." Luffy checked things off with his own fingers. "And the going merry," Luffy said, making the atmosphere tense slightly. "It is secure for the hell we are sailing towards." "It better be." All three turned to their resident sniper with a fierce look on his face. "Because I am not emphasizing this just for me." Usopp then took off, and Luffy turned to Kaya. She had a distant look on her face. It was like she couldn't decide to be flattered, relieved or worried for her boyfriend. Meanwhile, Captain, the clouds are starting to form and a little ahead of schedule, Masira's crew informed the monkey-looking man. They offered to aid the Straw Hats to get to Sky Island after helping their boss, the objective to help the King's Gourd hitch a ride on the Naku-Apu Sutorimu, knock upstream. It was a Grand Line phenomenon that occurs at least 5 times a month and at different locations. It was also the only way for the Straw Hats to ever reach Sky Island. The power behind the stream was enough to send a water high into the air, almost the heights of skyscrapers. If this couldn't reach the Sky Island, nothing will. Right now, the plan has been going smoothly until the calculations turned to be a little off. "Guys, we need to move now. Your ride is about here." Masira called over to the Straw Hats. "Brother, let's go." The other Monkey Man's crew was on the other side of the King's Gourd, to help it move to where the skyward current was to occur. Soon, the sky turned dark in the middle of the day. The clouds were black and thick, as if a hurricane was coming through. And the ocean started to stir and pull in the large vessels. "Okay Mugiwara, as far as we can take you and your crew. Good luck." Masira shouted out as both his and his brother's ships managed to back out of the currents. "Thank you for everything," Luffy called out, as good as he could since his girlfriend was clinging to him like a lifeline. Not to mention his reindeer. Little brother was doing the same with one of his legs. Meanwhile Usopp looked like a shoulder to attention, trying to hide his own fear from Kaya. "Hold it Mugiwara." The tense mood suddenly gained a sour taste. Turning towards the voice in the wind, they saw what could only be a wooden raft trying to be a pirate ship. The large black sail had the Jolly Roger as 3 skulls together, similar to that of the Cerberus. But Luffy knew whose was sailing this contraption. Blackbeard. That was deep and ominous, that of a man out for blood. "I thought that a piece of shit like you won't be so stupid to try and attack us out here. You will just get the Marines back on your puny tail. Those pathetic Marines have their hands full with that arrogant brat, Bellamy." That was almost ironic if you consider overconfidence to be the same as arrogance. "So, if you have the guts to take me on like a man, then you won't run away from your destined defeat, z ha ha ha." Everyone still had their looks on Luffy, wondering what he wants to do. Instead, Luffy doesn't say a word and continues to stare down the large raft with a pirate flag. Don't bother with them. Are we in the center of the whirlpool? They all nodded. While Luffy was focusing on the raft with Blackbeard on, he didn't notice that the spiraling whirlpool had suddenly stopped and the water turned calm and motionless. While everyone was silent and confused, Luffy smirked. Good. Then they are the ones about to lose. Then it happened. In the blink of an eye, in a split second, the water underneath the King's Gourd erupted worse than a centuries dormant volcano. All that water shot up and formed truly a marvel of a geyser. At the base, the raft carrying the Blackbeard pirates had collapsed under the impact and pressure. Meanwhile, the King's Gourd was riding along. Open the sails. Make sure everything is secure. Luffy shouted out, rushing to the sails along with the others. And get ready for the adventure of a lifetime. Yeah! The crew cheered with all their strength and finally, they all vanished above the clouds. From there, no one on the sea surface can help them now. They truly are on their own, with hopes they made it to Sky Island. As all this was happening, Cricket had already gone through 10 boxes of his cancer sticks, still watching the Straw Hats ride the current far above the clouds to reach the sky. He didn't even see the Blackbeard pirates try in vain to interfere with them. Go for it, kid. For the both of us. He knew that he may never see Luffy again, but Cricket still put all his hopes on that young pirate. End of chapter 35. The sudden increase in attitude is actually more dangerous than one can assume. It can cause more than dizziness. It can lead to bloody noses, headaches and fevers. So, when the Straw Hats had finally escaped the clouds, they were hit with the light atmosphere pretty hard. They were either on the deck panting or struggling to get on their other leg. Luffy, as always, was the first one to get his bearing and even hopped on the railings to his ship. We're here. The White Sea. Luffy sounded like he had lost his voice and had to whisper. But everyone heard him perfectly, and they had to see for themselves. The girls had stars in their eyes. Usopp and Chopper were just as bad. Even the stoic members such as Zoro, Kuro and Jin couldn't keep their jaws from opening in awe. Frank found himself holding the former unlucky in his arms so they both could see. Not even their sunglasses could keep their excitement from leaking out. Of course, they knew it was a sea of clouds when a certain someone emerged from it. Umi. I knew you will make it. Luffy was excited to see the giant sea serpent from his home waters. Right now, Umi was trying to catch his breath after that nautical nightmare back there. Then he let out a growl with a certain pattern. He says, I am clinging to your raft next time. Chopper translated for the crew and they tried to picture it, with varying results. Some were silly while the others were downright nasty. Nevertheless, Umi was able to swim in the clouds just fine. But the log pose, Nami took a good look if the instrument was damaged in the flight. Yet it was still pointing upward. We still haven't reached our destination? Probably. Luffy answered. As we are surrounded by clouds, it means that we are still at bottom level of the White Sea. The Naku Apu Sutorimu, knock upstream, wasn't strong enough to land us in front of Skypia, only to where we are in no danger of falling back to the Blue Sea. So how do we find our way to Skypia? I seriously doubt that we can learn how to sail clouds even on the Grand Line. Robin brought up and Luffy just let out a hum. I am already picking up on living signatures in a good distance. We are bound to run into someone who does know. Then Luffy turned his neck loudly towards the front side of the ship. Get on your guard, everyone. I am now sensing hostility coming at us fast. Luffy's seriousness was enough to convince his crew. Chopper was already there and with binoculars to get some distance on the sea of clouds. He just spotted another vessel. Right before it blew up. Someone attacked that ship. He panicked for a little bit to inform the crew and looked again. Oh, someone is coming straight at us. Chopper, brace. Luffy suddenly shouted and his little brother saw, with little time to spare, that this figure wasn't friendly. Gado Pointo, guard point. The little reindeer bit down on his little yellow ball, turning him into a ball of fur to soften the blow. However, the figure still sent Chopper bouncing on the ship. What are you doing on my ship? Luffy demanded of the stranger, who dressed similar to Indians but with a strange mask on his face, wore strange skates and even had a shiny bazooka in right hand with some kind of shield in the other hand. I am going to reject you. That was all the stranger spoke before landing a kick into Sanji's stomach, sending the cook into Jin and Usopp. Zoro tried to get a hit in, but the stranger parried with another kick that left him staggering. Kuro moved in but also was lifted like a leaf and blown away. But the stranger can go after anyone else. He was finally stopped in his tracks by a hand on his shoulder. "Get the hell!" Luffy spoke with calm anger. "Off my ship!" The captain tossed away the stranger with a mean shoulder throw. "And stay off." Before Luffy could even think, his girlfriend latched on his neck. "That's my Luffy, undefeatable," Nami purred in Luffy's neck before looking scandalized, facing the other men. "Which is more than what I can say about you boys, getting your ass kicked so easily." "Don't be too hard on them, Nami. They are still adjusting to the thin air up here, and I am too." Luffy responded gently and rubbed Nami's hair as if the fur of a house cat, which calmed down his girl a bit. "You are not hurt too bad, right Usopp?" Kaya asked her own boyfriend, who just rubbed his face where it landed on the deck. "Just my pride, for not seeing something up close from coming," Usopp mumbled before Kaya played with his cheek, wearing a playful smile. But then came a most interesting man to greet them. "It seems that you are in no need of my assistance." It was soft and aged, like that of a grandfather. But the Straw Hats never counted on seeing an old man dressed up armor and holding a lance. "Did I feel like you need some help finding your way? I am. Gone Fall or the Sky Knight if you prefer." Luffy cut him off, and while his crew looked indifferent, the old man seemed to be disturbed. "And yes, we do. We are from the Blue Sea and our compass started to point up here. The only way we could get to the White Sea was the Naku Apu Sutorimu, knock upstream." The old man, now known as Gone Fall, finally got the color back in his cheeks and stroked his beard. "I see. Then you folk are most lucky to survive such a dangerous current. And if your compass is still pointing up, then you are still fortunate. There is an island nearby." "Thank you, old man, and before you leave," Luffy said and got the Gone Fall's attention. "My idol and mentor, Shanks, wishes to send his regards." Now the old man was really shocked. His eyes almost left their sockets. Not to mention that this was news to the Straw Hats too. "Shanks got up here too." That was the collected response, and Luffy nodded, not even flinching. "He did. It was when he was a simple cabin boy, sailing with his old captain, Gold D. Roger." Luffy dropped the anvil before and now let loose a bomb on his ship's deck. Gone Fall then let out a chuckle. "Ah yes, Roger. I hadn't seen him in 20 years. The old man had the look of reminiscence, thinking back on his youth. "How is he doing?" Then Luffy lost his smirk and looked like someone had kicked his puppy to death right in front of him. "Not good. He became infected with an incurable illness, so he conquered the Grand Line and became the king of pirates. Then he turned himself in to be executed in his hometown of Logatown." Luffy answered, and soon, the atmosphere was one of shock and confusion. "But Luffy, didn't the Marines capture the Pirate King?" Kuro spoke up this time, and Luffy's expression didn't improve. This somehow made Kuro feel like a student answering a question wrong during class time. "No, like I said, Roger wanted to avoid dying of his illness, so he settled for a painless death by execution. He practically took a dingy and walked up to the Marine's front door with his hands behind his head." Luffy responded. "They had hoped to kill Roger in front of the whole world and send a message to all sailors of what will happen if they turn to piracy. Too bad it had the opposite effect and instead caused the Great Pirate Era." Gone Fall had a sad look about this. "It pains me to hear that. Roger and his gang were a lightly bunch. Still, thanks for informing me about what happened to him and his crew. Are most of them still in prison?" "No, only Roger was taken in." This thickened the plot and the atmosphere. The Marines couldn't care less about the Roger pirates and just wanted the king himself to kill. Shanks left the crew still as an apprentice and even parted ways with another mentor of mine as well as his fellow apprentice, Buggy. And who is this Buggy? Most the crew had no idea about the name, while everyone from the East Blue remembered the literal clown from Logatown. So that nobody with the big red nose sailed under the Pirate King. Zoro truly felt scammed by some divine prank, but Luffy just shrugged. "Yeah, but he was the black sheep of the crew, and it is best that you don't worry. He is still an egotistical weakling. I will do it again when the two of us meet again." Luffy responded with clear determination in his voice. And for a little while, There was just silence along the White Sea until Chopper walked up to the captain. Big brother. Luffy moved his glance to the little reindeer. Why did the Marines say they caught the Pirate King when you said he turned himself in? Luffy let out a sigh. When you mature and grow up, you will be able to understand why people lie. Luffy responded and went on. The Marines, along with a certain vice admiral I know, had tried and failed to capture Roger for years. Simply for being a pirate. When they learned that Roger had conquered the world's greatest ocean, it was insulting to their skill in catching dirtbags. That is why, when Roger appeared before them and surrendered without a fight, the Marines wanted to save face by stating that they finally captured the king of pirates and killed off his crew. And at least, for them, the lie had saved their reputation. Chopper was silent and everyone just couldn't remove their glances at him, waiting for the little reindeer to respond. Are there people like that other than the Marines, big brother? Plenty. XXXXX later, the Straw Hats found a flowing current of clouds which branch into streams between larger clouds, similar to icebergs. Only when they checked it out, they were nothing that cold or hard. Instead it was like gigantic marshmallows. Luffy, Chopper and Usopp were excited as 10-year-olds and played on the large clouds while Nami had her own fun, seeing if the clouds bounced better than her boyfriend, and not in the bedroom sense. That was when Usopp spotted something interesting. A gate? Yeah, a large one that is beyond these big clouds. Usopp responded. The Straw Hats decided that it was a good place to go as any. Soon, they found the gate. It was even bigger than the Cloudbergs from before and it looked like it was made out of stone. Then there was the lettering at the top that spelled, Heaven's Gate. Like the one you should see when you die? Hardly. Luffy responded. After all, we all felt the pain when we arrived here and when we were attacked. Dead men feel no pain. Luffy left it at that and no one asked any more questions. And the King's Gourd sailed through the Heaven's Gate, all the while. Hey look, over there. The silence was broken when Frank pointed something out, to the left side of the gate's interior. There was a small door and it opened to reveal a rather interesting character. It was a woman half the height of the boys, with wrinkles all over, wore a simple blue robe and appeared to have wings on her back. Greetings travelers. I am Amazon, keeper of Heaven's Gate and I ask that you all pay the toll. She spoke with an old woman's voice too. For each passenger aboard your vessel, you must pay 1 million extols. That's the law. This shocked a few of the Straw Hats while the others were calmer and wondering what if extols were the currency up in the clouds. Sorry madam, but have traveled from the blue sea below and we haven't heard of extols? We do have treasure and funds in berries. Very well. 1 extol amounts to 1,000 berries. Now that almost broke through the atmosphere like a ball hitting a glass plane. Unless you pay the toll then you will have to answer to the God Almighty. I am sorry madam but I am afraid that we are not going to pay the toll. Luffy spoke up. Unless you were the one who sent some kind of giant shrimp to our ship. Before anyone could respond, a pair of large lobster claws emerged on each side of the ship. This caused the Straw Hats to tense and ready to fight when the claws gently clutched the sides of the ship, pulling it along the cloud stream. Try to keep up Umi. That voice echoed throughout the clouds, followed by screams. All the while, Amazon didn't say a word and instead made a smirk. Foolish sailors from the blue sea below, you will never survive the hand of God Almighty. But no one paid her any mind. Meanwhile, Chopper, can you talk to this thing? Usopp shouted to the little reindeer, hanging on for dear life on Luffy's leg. Everyone was envying that Nami gets to be in the captain's arms, the latter not even budging from his spot. Even while the King's Gourd was moving as fast as a race car. If I don't think it can hear me, it is right under the King's Gourd. Chopper responded. Big brother. The attention went back to the big man in the coat, standing firmly on the deck. All I can tell you is that this giant shrimp is taking us beyond the light. Luffy pointed towards the literal light at the end of the tunnel, and once the ship went through Angel Island. The sight to behold was a beautiful one. There was a vast beach before a green forest and in the distance were some strange buildings stationed on various levels on more clouds. There was also a couple of giant plant stalks to be seen. The one on the right was connected to something higher up. It was even paved with clouds to look like a road slope. Once the ship had drifted to shallow water, Luffy jumped off and landed on the beach. Alright guys, Captain's orders are to relax and take in this beach before we start exploring Skypia. Get going. It was cute and amusing to see such a powerful character act childlike and fun-loving. Coming Luffy. I just need a quick change with the other girls. Nami shouted off and practically shoved all the women back into the cabin. This left nothing but boys on the deck until Usopp and Chopper hopped off to get on the beach of clouds. Let's just get on with it and find a place to relax, Frank said, and was followed along with the more serious Straw Hats. Finally, Umi popped on the beach, growling of the pleasured tone. The clouds were not like marshmallows but pillows as if made in heaven. Ouch! Cut it out. The girls had gotten a change of clothes for a time on a beach until they received a rather unpleasant surprise. The Straw Hats forgot that they still had the South Bird from Jaya in their cabin, right before they were sent soaring on the super current. And while Luffy scared it into be obedient, the bird still had a grudge for being manhandled in the jungle. Needless to say, the girls had gotten its attention. After giving them a fair share of picking with its large beak, the South Bird started to fly off to who knows where. The Straw Hat girls didn't care for if it will return since they found their way to Skypia and they forgot about it all over again to enjoy the beach. Back on Angel Beach, Chopper was being cute and taking in the softness and squishiness of the clouds before tumbling into Nami's leg. She ignored that and invited Chopper to check out a nearby hut with its own cloud pillows. Chopper said that it was different that on the beach. Usopp was elsewhere, working on something like a sandcastle in the cloud sand. Ah, my maidens. Sanji was back in his love-struck mood and presented some kind of flower he picked near the forest's boundary for each lovely woman to behold. The girls didn't care for the flowers and they just dropped them when Sanji wasn't looking. Carol did accept a handmade bouquet of various flowers from Frank, for the times they spent as partners. Georgia simply looked for a good spot for some painting and asked Alvida to help her out with the supplies from out of the ship. Robin wanted to do her own exploring of the beach, taking in the exotic wildlife. Ijiko came along to keep her company. Meanwhile, Zoro and Kuro and Jin were squatting down around something that looked like a fox, but with the mouth of a honeysucker and the fur was as white as the clouds themselves. That was when the sound of harp playing covered the entire beach. This got everyone's attention and they all turned to where the music was originating. It was a harp indeed that was being played live. An angel, Sanji spoke as if he was in a trance, like he was possessed, but no one responded. They all remembered the gatekeeper Amazon and thought that all inhabitants were similar to her. My name is Conus. She has blonde hair which she wears in 2 braided pigtails and 2 antennae sticking out at the top of her head. She wears a pink dress with black, flower-shaped textures that goes to her thighs. She also wears red and pink striped sandals, that are white on the bottom. And this is my pet cloud fox, Sue. Before anyone could respond, oh, that's smarts, everyone turned to see an odd sight. Luffy climbed up one of the trees, like the monkey in his name, and apparently broke a tooth or two on a certain melon. Shanks did tell me about a fruit which was tougher than steel but not on what it looked like. I guess that this was him getting even with me when Luffy's grumbles soon got soft and none of his crew could make it out. That is because the fruit is indeed impenetrable on the top but it is actually softer on the bottom. Conus explained and Luffy handed over the large melon for the angel host to turn it upside down and cut it open with a knife she had on herself. Here. The juice inside is delicious. Thank you. Luffy answered and did a big sip. His tongue wanted to escape his mouth and show how good the juice was. Yum. It should have been since Luffy's tongue suddenly had a mind of its own. Here, Nami. Luffy turned to his girlfriend but she was not in sight. Try it. Soon, everyone noticed and looked around for their navigator. They spotted her riding something on the sea of clouds. Ah, she is truly something special. Riding a waver on her first try, Conus proclaimed. It is a vehicle that we often use but it usually takes up to 10 years to master its controls. For it doesn't move on wind, waves or even ocean currents, but a breath dial. That last statement had gotten everyone's attention. A what? XXXXX later, at Conus's house, so, this is a dial. And I thought you guys just collect shells from the beach. Luffy said while holding what looked to be an ordinary large seashell. Konik giggled. Yes, at first glance you might. But that is a dial, a tone dial. This didn't impress anyone just yet, simply speak something loud into the opening of the shell. Sure. Luffy placed the dial near his mouth and took in a deep breath. Nami is the girl for my bed. Somehow, Luffy said that with a stoic look on his face and even ignored Sanji's foot on his cheek. Watch that tongue of yours before I stomp it flat. This only made the guests and their host to be amused. And Luffy looked so shameless and yet so comfortable about that statement regarding Nami. Good, now press the apex of the shell. Konis stated, and Luffy pushed Sanji's foot out of his eye. After finding the centerpiece of the shell, Luffy pressed it good with his index finger, and out of it came. Nami is the girl for my bed, watch that tongue of yours. Wow, that is exactly what we said. Luffy was actually amazed by how the tone dial acted exactly like a recorder. And already, mischievous thoughts seemed into his head. What else can dials do? Konis pointed out various dials used for household purposes. A heat dial used to cook, a milky dial to form clouds, a lamp dial for light during the night, and a thunder dial for electricity. Unfortunately, there are people who develop dials for warfare. Such as, Luffy beckoned Konis to continue. Their host looked haunted by something, but she answered anyways. They created a flame dial, releasing fire instead of heat, an axe dial to inflict harm onto others. Then there is the impact dial. Konis said that last one like a monster from a nightmare she had. It absorbs any impact that hits and releases with just enough to break the bones in a human body. But it's inferior to the reject dial, the one used only for combat. And how is the reject dial superior to the impact dial? Zoro asked. A little interested himself. Konis started to shake and answered with an uneasy voice. The reject dial is 10 times more powerful than an impact dial. It is strong enough to kill the target and the user. A double-edged sword if there ever was an example of the term. Suddenly Luffy froze and hastily made his way to the window, sweat down his neck and his eyes filled with fear. His breathing was swallow and sharp, like he was trying to calm himself down but not making any good progress. Something wrong? It's Nami. I just felt danger and terror appear on my girlfriend's signature. Luffy tried to stabilize himself, but the fear was also present in his voice. Then he pointed into the direction of dark and ominous clouds. What's far over there? That was where I felt Nami to be at. That's where God and his subjects rule and dwell. A forbidden place to those who live in the sky. This was another resident of Konis's house, her father to be exact, Pagaya. Pagaya is a Skypian man of average height. He is almost bald but has the typical Skypian hair antennae sticking out. He has a strange round beard covering his mouth, and he is always shown with closed eyes, however he seems fully able to both see and talk. His hair antennas and beard are dark brown, along with his eyebrows. He wears the typical Skypian robes, in his case a brown-yellow one with a light yellow collar, and light yellow at the end of where the sleeves would be, if it had any. It also has a black leaf-like design. The home of God Almighty that slays trespassers, upper yard. What's going on, Captain? I can't hone in on Nami Swan. Ignoring Sanji's typical foolishness, Luffy took this seriously, and the answer was simple. I trained with my haki along with a lot more for 10 years, Sanji. Your level is nowhere near mine. But Nami-chan is still alive, that much I can tell. Luffy stopped to concentrate, with a frown that showed it. But then his face turned to horror in a blink. The Going Merry, they found it and half of us had been placed on her, drifting towards upper yard. What? Echoing throughout the house, the Straw Hats did a head count and yes, they came out on short. Only Luffy, Sanji, Usopp, Najiko, Kuro and Frank were present and accounted for. Are you saying that both Kaya and our scout ship, that she gave us, has been stolen? The resident sniper soon found himself in an unimaginable position. He was clutching Luffy by the collar and practically lifting him off the ground. How could you let this happen? How? Luffy was silenced for a moment before releasing the grasp on his collar by a tight grip on both Usopp's wrists. I will admit it, Usopp. You have surprised me today with that reckless outburst. I am sure that Kaya would have wished to see it for herself. And somehow, Luffy was able to keep a straight face from saying this. But I will also admit that this happened because I lowered my guard when we arrived, and that someone has been damping my haki. What kind of excuse is that? Luffy sighed that he was interrupted by both the sniper and the chef at the same time, for their own reasons. Believe me or not, it is possible to block out someone else's haki with your own. My teachers did this much often during my training. Luffy responded. I didn't think much of it until now since I noticed that I couldn't feel anyone outside the house while using my haki causally. The rest is history. So, what should we do about it, Captain? Kuro asked as calm as ever but also hiding his worry since the captain's girl is in unknown dangers. If she is harmed in any way, Luffy could just order the whole land on fire. What do you think? Luffy turned to the hosts. You're going to tell us everything, and if it helps, you both will get off the hook. Both Konis and Pagaya saw that Luffy's hand reached for his blade, adding into the tension inside that house. Tell us now. XXXXX. And so, they arrived at Upper Yard. It appeared to be half an island that was resting on the clouds. It was a big shook back at Angel Island, that the large sea creature that pulled their main ship to the beach and stole the Going Merry was summoned by Konis. She said that it was part of their God's rule to bring in Traveler against his laws on purpose with the sole intention of punishing them for sailing on the White Sea, his domain. Back to stealing the Going Merry, the remaining Straw Hats were horrified and outraged at the sight of the King's Gourd. Their main ship had a giant hole craved out of the hull where they kept the Going Merry. The deck was torn up too and the rooms were all vandalized, any and all valuables were stolen. Luffy practically had a field day with the entire population on Angel Island. They would have been killed if the others hadn't convinced him otherwise. The residents were spared and instead were given an order to repair the King's Gourd. Back to the Upper Yard. The remaining Straw Hats were sailing on a small but sturdy boat that was powered by a pair of enlarged breath dials, the Karasumaru. The name came from how its blow was in the shape of a black bird with its beak open and eyes staring out. Aside for the rather large forest, the trip into Upper Yard was actually eventless until they made a turn to spot a gate up ahead. Between it and them were a bunch of bladed pendulums. Busashoku. Pasutoru, armament. Pistol. Luffy stretched his arm and punched the blades with haki for extra defense and prevent damaging his own arm. Kyaku Boshi, exploding star. Usopp used his rifle to also break the blades with a special explosion round. Bakuden Bershiretto, bomb breath bullets. Frank took out his own special firearm and substituted standard bullets for his own, created from his devil fruit. Ronduabato Taburabureku, roundabout table break. Sanji made quick footwork of the remaining blades, sending them to be harmless embedded in the large tree trunks. Save some for me next time. Kuro sounded like a kid denied of the fun that the others were enjoying while still as calm as ever. Are you not harmed, Nijiko? Kaya was just one accident. Kuro did have manners when it came to treating women. Especially when Nijiko is the sister to the captain's girlfriend. Not hurt, just annoyed. Nijiko mumbled while the boys just focused on keeping an eye out for danger. Seriously, my little sister defeated a Baroque works agent while I just ran back there. Feel like your sister doesn't need you protecting her anymore? Nijiko turned to Luffy and scuttled to get closer. This was between the two of them. Doesn't matter, Usopp. Go through either one. Luffy sent a comment the other way for a little moment. Now do you wish to help your sister, my girlfriend? You are an interesting man, Captain. Nijiko responded. And I know that you didn't waste time waiting to get closer to my sister. She had to give Luffy credit for having such a neutral face that just had steam emerging out of his ears, with an expression saying, I am not going to ask. Then everyone had lost all thought when they felt something wrong. Like they suddenly were sailing on nothing. Apparently, Usopp had to take the path that led to a sharp slide of clouds, going down, and in that moment, when it hit them, the ship started to fall. Feet up, feet up. Luffy shouted and his crew obeyed, seeing the captain somehow stretching himself to cover the deck of the boat. Gum Gum Yasashi Kaba, gentle cover, and gentle it was when the boat actually landed on the path still, while everyone landed on their captain without feeling too much pain. And Kuro even noticed that the bottom of the boat was blacker than before only for when the vessel hit the clouds. Just can't you do with that power, Captain? Nijiko shouted both as an excited kid and a woman witnessing true manliness. Luffy just compressed himself back to his original figure, with his clothes somehow intact and his blades still on his waist. I don't know. I am still learning. Luffy replied and left it at that. Soon, everyone's attention was to the yet another thick, giant forest with one major addition. It was swarming with countless clouds in the shape of perfect spheres. It was a ball pit in a field of no gravity. These remind me of spores, so I suggest you don't touch one of them. Luffy spoke up and turned to see Usopp play with one anyways. Put that away. Before Usopp could respond, a snake emerged from the sphere, scaring everyone. Luffy swiftly kicked it away into the woods but couldn't relax when another floated towards Sanji, who looked ready to kick it away too. Sanji, don't touch that! Luffy shouted off, and like before, he was ignored and the cloud sphere instead exploded. Everyone aboard was covered in soot, including Luffy, who was ready to burst with annoyance. How do like my Bikuratama, surprise balls? You will never know what's inside until it's too late. Ho 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 ho. Everyone heard a voice that can be described as mocking and someone scratching a blackboard. The figure they saw was something hard to make out. It was a round-shaped man with fair skin and long, dark red hair. He is clad in a white, full-body jumpsuit, which has a vertical line of golden rings that run from front to back, an orange hat, orange gloves, shoes, and large, yellow sunglasses that completely obscure his eyes. Finally, he has small white wings on his back. I am Satori of the Forest, one of God's 4 priests and ruler of the Trial of Sphere. And you are the fools who chose my trial. We are here for our ship and our crewmates that you stole from us. Luffy spoke up, and don't mock us for playing by your rules, pretty hypocritical as your God. Like a lost lamb. The round man maintained his smile, but Luffy could tell that his words had gotten to the priest. So, let's get this over with. Ho ho ho. Such arrogance will only get you killed her. All these balls are under my control, and even if you can reach me, I am untouchable. Satori mocked the pirates and noticed that while most of them are visually annoyed, there was a couple that won't twitch. Now then, a shot straight ahead. Satori then demonstrated some impressive balance while moving out of the way of a bullet from a rifle, all the while moving his round body into a dance. Just what is that guy? Usopp, the sniper of course, queried with the mouth of his rifle spewing smoke that tells he just fired it. He tried to aim again but changed angle at the last moment, and yet the round priest dodged it anyways. How is he doing this? Calm down, Usopp, it is clear as the nose on your face. Kuro said with a slight emphasis on the word nose, in reference to Usopp's. And somehow, the sniper took no offense and was instead interested to hear Kuro out. I need to spell it out. Kenbunshoku Haki, observation Haki. Just like what Luffy has been training us in. Usopp directed his attention to the priest, who was still dancing on his ball like no one's business. This is the first time an enemy used Kenbunshoku Haki. Usopp was definitely pointing out the obvious today. He probably will say the sky is blue next. Luffy. Sorry guys, but I will take a rain check on this one. The captain said and raised his leg, much to the confusion of the crew. Right before they were swept and sent flying down to the forest ground. You guys will thank me later. I wish that Luffy will warn us before trying to kill us. Usopp mumbled as the fall only got dirt on himself, thanks to his physical training and some full-body Busohoku Haki, armament Haki, to help. And when he was about to turn his head, a floating white ball appeared right in front of him, and out of came crab claws. Usopp was able to send it flying with yet another rifle round. I am really starting to hate these things. Then you will wish that dumping will croak. Nejiko answered Usopp and pointed to the priest that was still enjoying the view of the forest and all its spherical glory. The thought of aiming at him from an advantage point did cross Usopp's mind, but that won't change anything since the priest still had Kenbunshoku Haki. A strike from the right with a left hook. That was the voice of the priest, the only one that sounded worse than fingernails on a blackboard. And a kick from the outside using the same leg. Usopp and Nojiko then heard something, Inpakuto, impact. After that was proclaimed, 2 bodies landed near the 2 pirates. It was Sanji and Jin, looking like someone had fired a bazooka right in their faces. Damn it, not only is that shitball of a priest able to predict our moves, but he got something behind those gloves. Sanji grumbled terribly while Jin had nothing else to add to that. It was time to rethink their plan of attack when Nuki Ashi foot maneuver. The Strafuts on the forest ground heard a familiar voice and Usopp recognized that move. Kuro moved in the same blurs from Usopp's old home island back in the East Blue against the priest, but it was still not enough. The round man jumped off his white ball and it exploded worse than a ton of TNT. The worst that Kuro got was a trip back into the bark of one of the giant trees. Damn, that smarts. Kuro mumbled and painfully wrenched himself free. That was a real shot in the dark, and personally, the mastermind wasn't in the mood to try another. Instead, he regrouped with the others. They all were watching Usopp with his rifle armed and loaded but not firing off. "You got something, sniper? Don't distract me now." Usopp retorted and focused back to whatever he was aiming at. Then he took out a spare rifle silencer, attached it to the barrel, and finally shot off his round. Kuro followed the pathway and realized what Usopp had planned. The priest had jumped off the floating ball that exploded in Kuro's face and landed on another where he started to be a sitting duck yet again. But Usopp was not aiming at the priest. It was a floating ball that was hovering near the priest's location. And that one exploded too, with the round priest in its path. It was impressive of his Haki to see our attacks coming, but it seems that he either hadn't trained enough or didn't bother to sense attacks that are not aimed at him directly. Usopp explained his plan, proud of himself to see a weakness that he can manipulate against their common foe. "You fools!" The pirates turned to see the priest getting up from the nasty blast from behind, followed by the terrible fall to the ground. "Think that you have won? It's not over until the fat man sings." The round priest pulled out a baton out of nowhere that had a string attached to the tip, with a dragon made of clouds attached to the other end of the string. Tama Doragon, Tama Dragon. The priest pulled hard on the string to the dragon and sent it down on the ground, stirring up more impact force than before. It was like a missile was launched at the ground. And in the rebound force, the straw hats were scattered, but the round man was only interested in one of them. "Hello, cutie." Nejiko laid at a tree stump, too dazed to even get up. But she could see the dumpling of a priest stare down on her with the most disgusting eyes she ever seen since the crew of fishman pirates that attacked her home village. She shivered at such dark memories that came hard with all the pain she was feeling. "Oh ho ho ho," shaking with excitement. "I am." The priest mocked the young lady and making her feel even more fear. "No, don't." Nejiko couldn't even beg as her voice was struggling to escape her mouth. She could just watch as the priest's hand, the one with the power to send fighters like Sanji and Jin flying with ease, moved closer to her face. "Don't you worry, my dear. It will only be a moment before you will no longer see the light of day ever again." The fat priest laughed and was only inches from using whatever impact he had up his sleeve on Nejiko's face when Koshi o Yaku, burn around the waist. Nejiko saw something that she hadn't in over 8 years. A person brutally and mercilessly slain in front of her eyes. The first that happened with her own mother, taking a bullet for both her and Nami. And now it was the mocking rice ball of a priest who knew it was coming but didn't have the stuff to dodge it. "I am getting half a year on the couch for this." Nejiko heard Luffy's voice but was still body numb from the whole experience. "I can't apologize enough for putting you in such danger, Nejiko. I can only bring you to your sister, come on." XXXXX. When the priest was murdered, this set off a chain reaction throughout Upper Yard. High above, in a palace among clouds, a shaded figure lies comfortably on his throne and eating an apple from the fruit bowl nearby. Then he stops in mid-bite yet returns with a dark chuckle. "So, Satori had finally got himself killed, eh? He was the weakest one of my soldiers with the arrogance that can only come from inexperience." Elsewhere, 3 more blackened people noticed and with real body movement. Too bad that they all thought the same as the figure on his throne within the Palace of Clouds. Good riddance to bad rubbish. Finally, in a village that's surrounded by clouds, a young girl suddenly emerged from her slumber. She then ran out of her house to show that the village resembled that of American Indians. The other villagers noticed the girl run as if the devil was after her. "One of God's men has died, he was killed." Later, "Better keep your eyes closed. This has just turned awful," Luffy said to Nejiko, still shaking from the experience with the trials of balls. The rest of the passengers can concur with the surroundings. It was no trial, just a pathway of clouds hovering a good distance above a grass field that was paved with iron spikes, each had a human sklades. "Just tell me when we find the going merry," Nejiko mumbled with her face buried in Luffy's coat. "I can't even imagine just as my little sister do this." Just then, Luffy's right arm suddenly grabbed Nejiko and pressed her into his chest. Ignoring her cry of surprise, the captain raised his left hand with the palm open just in time for a cannonball to explode without actually harming the boat or the passengers. "Show yourselves. We are with your enemies." Luffy shouted off into the forest surrounding the clearing and, using the same hand as before, caught another cannonball while the arm retracted to absorb the impact force. Immediately, they had company of people that looked somewhat of American Indians wearing some kind of skates on their feet. They moved in a hurry and passed past the boat, but they noticed Luffy's arm and stopped. They then began to mutter between each other, "That guy's arm. It looks weird. It just caught Wiper's round." Luffy then crushed the cannonball and released his arm to original length and faced one of the Indians that carried a bazooka. "So, we met again, with an uglier mug, eh?" The rest of the crew realized almost immediately that the figure who attacked them when they awoke in the White Sea was back and without wearing the mask. "At least you have a decent name, Wiper." Wiper is a tall, muscular man and sports a pair of little wings on his back. He's covered by various tribal tattoos across his left shoulder and the left side of his face. He has very long dark brown hair is arranged in a mohawk that follows into a segmented braid that goes slightly past his waist, resembling those worn by real-life Native Americans, and he has little spherical earrings. He wears a grass skirt, with a rope belt decorated by 3 small ornaments that look like fangs or claws around his waist. "What the hell? An Akuma no Mi, devil fruit." Wiper mumbled to himself, yet Luffy heard him completely, with a confident smirk. "Do you know other boys who can take a hit and stretch his limits like I can?" Wiper chewed the stick in his mouth until it snapped in two. He didn't like how this man with a hat made of straw was making light of all this. "I will get you back from earlier, but you better get lost. This land was stolen from us and we are getting it back," Wiper announced to the Straw Hats. "We also are getting back what was stolen from us, so we will stay out of your way if you do the same." "Ta," Luffy waved as their ship eventually moved out of sight from the strange Indians. Thankfully, they were too preoccupied to follow the Straw Hats. They had other plans and no time to waste on anyone else. XXXXX eventually, there she is. Luffy pointed out into the distance. It was a large altar that was surrounded by the same clouds they had been sailing on, with the Going Merry perched like a sacrifice. They all wasted no time hurrying over to the ship, even ignoring the sharks that tried to eat them alive. They were all left to dye the clouds red. "Stop!" Luffy suddenly shouted. He even violently tugged at the boat to turn 90 degrees and come to a halt. Ignoring the complaints of his crew, Luffy took a branch from who knows where and tossed it slightly forward. The sight of the branch being sliced into pieces while in midair silenced his crewmates. "Keep the boat here. I will take care of this," Luffy commanded while not even facing his crew, and jumped off without waiting for a response. The Straw Hats heard that voice before and they won't dare disobey. They just watched as Luffy apparently jumped through the air as if the atmosphere was solid. But a closer look revealed that it was all strings. Luffy must have used both common forms of Haki to know where the strings are and to harden his footwear to not get cut by them. Then they heard a laugh coming from in the distance. "Fools! Thought you can match one of God's priests." Someone was close to the altar and had the attitude of a man who trashed his competition. Usopp then saw something that made his blood boil. Beaten bodies of a few of the crew and Chopper was being held by his throat with the hand of this priest. "I am Shira of the string clouds that litter this ocean. Ready to bind anything that moves. Ready for my kill." Shira resembles a stereotypical aviator from the early 1900s. He has a thin, pointed mustache that splits into 2 parts. On his head there is an aviator hat decorated with wings, and a pair of goggles on the front. His attire is composed of an orange fur-lined jacket, with brown swollen sleeves decorated by beige spots. Loose matching orange pants held up by a belt, fur-lined gloves and boots, and a purple scarf around his neck. And on his back is a pair of typical wings, a standard feature of all the inhabitants of Skypia. Finally, he was riding a gigantic bird that he named Fuza. Fuza is a purple feathered bird with gigantic wings on its enormous body. Fuza is large enough to carry a full-grown man. It has red feathers around its neck. Its head is white, has a sharpened beak, and the eyes are yellow-colored. Its tail is further purple-colored with lighter extensions to it. The claws underneath its legs are white, with sharp black nails. "And what are you fools going to do about?" Shira couldn't say another word when pain surged throughout his body. Then he felt hot. A streak of searing heat had cut through his torso and fired his nerves, as well as scorching his heart. It was too much for him and he flew to the clouds below. All the while, Luffy stayed on the giant bird in still flight, with its wings as the only thing on it moving. Down below, eyes from the clearing and from the colossal trees watched such a swift, brutal kill. Luffy looked like the new predator in town as he looked down on the bird still flying. What to do with you? End of chapter 37. I see. Luffy spoke with his chin scratched by his right hand while Chopper looked over the large bird. A flame dial attached to the top of her throat in order to spew flames which burned the Going Merry. All the while, the large-than-life bird tried to avoid Luffy's gaze out of fear and shame. Just make sure she doesn't burn anything else unless I say so. I am going to see about dinner tonight from Sanji. Luffy, the straw hat-wearing captain knew that voice and turned to his lover. Sorry, I had to make sure you were still here. It was just so scary. Nami had a little tear in her eyes as she gently tackled her boyfriend. And thanks again for looking after my sister. Not a problem, especially for you, Nami. Luffy comforted her. Now how about we find out when dinner is ready? We can sit by the fire and relax for a bit. Nami nodded and so they did. You still surprised me when you found out where this entire forest came from. I haven't seen you so excited like that in a while. Crazy, huh? To think that this was half of the island of Jaya that connects to the other half by the house where the old man lives. Nami mumbled, enjoying the embrace of her boyfriend very much. If we find the city of gold, then Noland was telling the truth all along. Later, I still say you should try it. At least have some protein to help those muscles grow. Luffy told Nami, sitting while munching on what seemed to be cooked, cloud shark, meat. His girlfriend just shook her head at the slowest pace. Nah, I will rather watch these grow. Luffy actually stopped in mid-bite and fought the urge to roll his eyes. Whether Nami will see that or not. He just twitched his eyebrow and went back to his food. Whatever. Luffy practically grumbled while food was still in his mouth. So, what do we have so far, you guys? First things, Usopp spoke with a teacher's baton in hand and somehow a blackboard right behind him. He was trying to look like a leader briefing his team. We know that among the dozens of soldiers in God's army, there were 4 officers that lead right under the boss himself. We actually ran into one of those jerks when we tried one of those paths to God's trials, the one with the spheres. Sanji added. His idea of a trial was to litter the forest with white spheres with lethal surprises inside each one while tempting us to try and hit him. And he actually used our captain's haki to see our attacks before we started to use them. It was all shit and games for that talking rice ball until our sniper got a good hit. Kuro was actually eating a rice ball while relaxed among the straw hats. Apparently one of the hidden weaknesses to this haki was that it is useless to predict attacks that were not aimed at the user. He just never counted on one of his own spheres behind used against him. Another one of those officers tried to attack the Going Merry and I tried to fight him with Big Brother's training until I suddenly got tangled in something I couldn't see. All I could witness was him taunting and ready to burn our ship. Chopper took his turn and took a rather depressed tone near the ending. Aside from these officers and their skill in haki, we did some exploring of this upper yard. We made a discovery that confirms that this used to be part of the Jaya Island and somehow ended up here over 10,000 feet above sea level. Robin took things in another direction while staying on topic. So there really was a city of gold, but instead of being in the Grand Line when Noland returned, it was here. Luffy commented while rubbing his chin hairs. This is a big discovery and yet a big disappointment too. Before anyone could question, we had hoped to find the city of gold to prove to the world that Noland never lied, but who is to believe us that it is in the sky? I am sure that Mr. Cricket from Jaya will still appreciate the truth in any way we can tell him. Robin responded and no one said another word. After a while of just eating in silence, they started to make a plan. Chopper and a few more will remain with the Going Merry and find out a way to return the scout ship back to their main ship back at Angel Beach. The others will explore the opposite side of the forest to try and find the city of gold. Based on the ugly encounters lately, it is clear that there are plenty of enemies that invest upper yard, so the Straw Hats will have to keep their senses sharp. There was a war down below in Alabastra and now, there is one brewing high in the heavens. And once again, the Straw Hats have walked right into the middle of it. XXXXX. It was a real surprise that there was no attack when they were sleeping that night. What really shocked them was the state of the Going Merry. All the signs point to, someone worked on the Going Merry last night. But who? Usopp asked as he practically inspected every square inch of the scout ship. I mean, this is appreciated, but I thought we were the only ones in the forest. While the others were scratching their heads, Kaya was trying to catch up with her boyfriend so that he doesn't bang his head on something by accident. Also, Luffy was scratching his chin while deep in thought. Mr. Captain, you have something? Robin queried, and that successfully got everyone's attention to Luffy. The man himself didn't seem to be bothered by this and remained in thought before answering. It is just that this reminds me of a legend my old mentor told me whenever he and his crew will camp out on a nearby island. He always loved to camp. Before anyone could respond, he told me the legend of a mysterious being that, if witnessed, will look like a silhouette child wearing a raincoat with a hammer in hand. These beings usually appear to repair a ship while the crew were sound asleep. But they are rarely seen, so they remained a legend. Do you still believe it then? Zoro asked. Because I don't see why we are wasting time. I thought we made a plan last night. As grumpy as that may be, he does have a point. Fine, Zoro. Luffy let out a huff. Guys, get the Going Merry back to Angel Beach while the rest of us go and look for the City of Gold. XXXXX Usopp would never let the Going Merry out of his sights as soon as he got it back, so he stayed with it. Kaya felt both amused and flattered since she was the one who supplied the scout ship to say thank you. Even if the Straw Hats already had a ship to sail, instead she joined in and has a boyfriend who treats her ship like it was herself. Alvida, Nijiko and Georgia joined in because they felt sorry for Kaya, and Sanji of course wanted to protect the girls. Usopp made sure that the cook keeps his hands to himself. Everyone else left with various directions to scan the upper yard for the City of Gold. You know that you can bang your head by riding my shoulders, right Nami? Luffy asked with concern and a hint of annoyance that his girlfriend had gone all 5-year-old on him by hitching a ride. Don't worry Luffy, I have my eyes out. Yep, 5 years old. But Luffy didn't have the nerve to say so. Besides, even when I am heavy you will still carry me, right? Luffy just felt red to the face and steam escaped his ears. Sure, but they will get a turn too. Luffy responded, and Nami was just glad that her boyfriend got the general message. After she had her fun, Nami jumped down to the same foot level as Luffy and walked by him until the couple stopped and turned to see Wiper, standing staring them down. I thought that you, Blue Sea Dwellers, will leave this land. It belongs to us. I have heard that before and we are no interested in fighting for land. Luffy responded. We are looking for a City of Gold here in Upper Yard. You can have this land, we are just here to explore. Luffy said while his hand was on his rapier and the other was making sure that his girlfriend was besides him. Wiper's ugly mug creeped her out. That just means you are still trespassing. And I wish not to waste my time and energy in killing you. I had to save it for my true enemy. Wiper said and was about to leave when he halfing big moving along the tree he was aiming at. You better leave that alone. Luffy spoke up again. Nola is a little grouchy with all our noise. Both Wiper and Nami widened their eyes at what could only be the largest snake they ever seen. In another part of the forest, that's way we just came, Cactus Head. Kuro said in embarrassment that his companion suddenly walked the other way. Robin looked back and found it amusing, with her giggle into her little hand. Zoro coughed in embarrassment and made a lame excuse. I am only impressed that this stupid habit doesn't hinder your battle prowess. And another thing, Kuro trailed off. Well, got any more to nag me about? Zoro turned his attention to whatever has silenced the ex-captain and swallowed his words too. And you will too when you gaze upon what could only be a house-sized south bird. With the Going Merry, it's amazing, such sloppy work, but the girl can still sail. Usopp commented about the little scout ship. We know, you said that for the umpteenth time. Sanji spoke to the sniper with disdain but switched to his lovesick self as he was carrying trays with tea and sweets. Refreshments for lovely ladies on this lovely day. Just bought them on the table and get back to watch duty. Kaya responded with disinterest. And you too Usopp-kun. The sniper stiffened to attention. Remember, Sanji is our eyes on the ship and you are the eyes in the sky. Umi-kun is our eyes in the sea, isn't that right boy? Kaya got out of her beach chair and leaned over the railing where the former Lord of the Coast from the East Blue popped out. Somehow, he had the look of a little boy blushing to the praise of a beautiful woman. It was a cute sight and Kaya had to hold a giggle back to not give the wrong idea to her boyfriend and the cook. Both of them seemed to be protective of her for their own reasons. But it wasn't Umi Tente that got their senses on alert, it was. Greeting intruders. We have found your vessel that you stole from us to be our sacrifice to God Almighty. The Straw Hats got on tense and spotted a strange pair dancing on the opposite railing. And we have been sent to take it back, as well as revenge. These two looked a lot like the dumpling priest, Satori. In yet another part of the forest, I swear that you two are practically dating each other. Jin spoke with a tone that was either amusement or annoyance. It was because Frank and Carol were walking like they were glued to each other. Why don't you two kiss and quiet with the suspense? Get yourself a girlfriend, Jin. Then we can talk, whenever that happens. Frank retorted, which got Carol to giggle at Jin's impossibly red face. And just when he looked like he was going to scream back. Guys. We need to be quieter or danger will find us. And who knows what could be lurking in this forest. Chopper felt like his big brother put him in charge, so he tried to keep peace between the group. But before his companions could respond. It's far too late to worry about that, intruders. Bah, the Straw Hats turned to see what seemed to be a human dressed in strange white robes, weird shoes and goat horns on his head. God Almighty knew you were here when you invaded our clouds. Bah, and now that you are here on our holy land, it is time for your death, by our hands. Bah. That strange human proclaimed, and many more appeared from behind the giant trees. XXXXX. Meanwhile, somewhere made mostly of clouds. Hello, the two of us are here. A pair of large figures entered through a gate to what looked to be an open field of clouds that had some kind of fancy overhang and bed made for an emperor on the far side. And why have been summoned when there is a foolish tribe trespassing that we could be killing? Our great ruler, our god, has summoned all of us here priests. He has his reasons for some. The two of you, Lord Om and Gedasu, answered one of the unnamed subjects with a full beard and dressed in a Greek-style robe, answered to the pair waiting rather impatiently. Om is a tall, bald, muscular, and bearded man. Like the other inhabitants of Skypia, he has a pair of small wings sprouting from his back. He's always seen wearing a pair of sunglasses with point-like extensions on both sides. His right arm is covered with tattoos. The one on his wrist, in particular, resembles a bracelet. His attire consists of a dark green A-shirt, loose gray pants with many pockets and what look like zips under his knees, a long and flowing white sash around his waist, similar to the one worn by his master, and dark leather boots with bandages around the soles. He is also carrying a rather interesting weapon, a massive sword with an extra-large hilt. Why are we MMPH? The other, Gedatsu, spoke before he suddenly sucked in his lips, which prevented him from speaking clearly. Gedatsu is a tall, dark-skinned man. He has an unusual hairstyle, with a row of upward-pointing tufts or Rasta-styled dreadlocks from ear to ear. He has a typical bilkin pair of wings on his back. He was seen wearing a matching purple jacket and pants, black gloves and shoes, a pink shirt, and a blue tie-like scarf around his neck. He sports a large, white tissue belt around his waist with a red circle in his center, resembling the Japanese flag. Lord Gedatsu, if you want to speak then don't suck in your lips. That same subject pointed out, as if this was a comedy skit. The dark-skinned priest just had a silent, shocked face which freed his lips. How disgraceful for one of God's four commanders. Om spoke, and not like when Gedatsu did his ridiculous habit. And for the last time, where is he? Om will regret asking that when both he and Gedatsu were shocked by a sudden thunderbolt. The bearded subject and the others in robes along with a collection of stunning women watched as that streak of lightning started to backflip like a trained acrobat before forming something of a human body that landed on the throne. He is here. God Enel has arrived, mortals. Enel is a tall, muscular man with light hair covered by a simple white bandana. He has long earlobes weighted down by diamond-shaped gold earrings that stretch all the way to his chest. He wears loose, orange pants with a black pattern on them, and around his waist there is a blue, flowing sash, holding up a light blue veil. He wears gold bracelets on both his arms as well as gold anklets on his legs, and two little gold rings around his bigger toes. His nose has many lines running horizontally across it. His earlobes are extremely long, extending to his torso. He also holds 4 large tomo drums attached via a large ring to his back, instead of the regular Skypian wings. What an entrance, only done by God. Gedatsu tried to act tough, but his act of seeming rubbing his arms together made him look more ridiculous. So why are we here? Lord Gedatsu, if you want to cross your arms then do as so. That same subject did it properly, which got the bumbling priest to get a shocked face again. That made Ohm groan in embarrassment yet again, since he has to share a rank with that fool. But Enel just laughed without a care in the world, somehow amused by Gedatsu's ridiculous habit. Oh, I was bored, that's all. Enel finally answered while playing with an apple, but also because of something that I am sure that the two of you already noticed. Shira and Satori apparently have been slain, and by the same intruder to our land. Satori was always the arrogant one with clear inexperience, but Shira, I never thought that airhead will ever go down. Ohm responded with clear disdain for the former but a slight respect for the latter. Gedatsu just sucked on his lips once again, and the bearded subject pointed it out again. Of course, as expected to hear from my truly strongest commander. Enel spoke back. Those two will not be missed, as God's power will never be damaged or defied. Enel then whispered to the handmaidens to peel him an apple to eat. Yet what I truly wanted to announce is that the vessel has been completed. It will time to leave for the land that gods live. Speechless, are we? Back on the Going Merry. The two look-alikes started to laugh and dance around. We must have scared you silly, foolish mortals. Good. Not scared, just confused. Usopp spoke up, with his hand on his trusty rifle and ready to fire. I could have sworn that you were that dumpling who dances on white balls in the forest. Are you two his biggest fans, because your uncanny resemblance just makes you look more disgusting. He is our big brother, and you lot killed him, the other said, and the Straw Hats got on guard. It was clear where this was going. Here, we will get our revenge. Sorry, but you have the wrong people. Nijiko spoke up, with a pair of daggers hidden in her hands. Your brother was killed, but the killer is not here. You should check out the forest because I last saw him go that way. Nami's sister stared them down with the fresh memory of what that dumpling was going to do to her until Luffy bisected him without mercy. She was not going to be helpless this time, and she will replay her captain. Doesn't matter, you all are going to die because of God Almighty's prophecy. Those two started to laugh manically while the Straw Hats got ready for one big fight. XXXXX. Meanwhile, tell me I am not dreaming. Wiper said in a deadpan tone. Please, I must be having a nightmare. I am not riding the Lord of the Sky like a kid on a horse. Unfortunately, he was, and he had to stare at the backside of Luffy with his girl riding both the snake and her boyfriend's lap. Save your breath for Eneru, Wiper. Luffy responded, not even bothering to face the native to the sky. Once he is dead, then you can get back to your people, and this never happened. Fine. Wiper clammed up and just kept an eye out for whoever will see him like this. If they should even snicker, they will get burned really bad from his bazooka. Still, this day won't improve when they did get company from Wiper's own gang of rebels. Not one word. But Wiper, why are you with them? One of them appeared to have a large bandana covering his eyes and asked with real concern. And how the hell did that intruder tame the Lord of the Sky? He flinched along with the others when the giant snake glared at him, only to calm down when Luffy rubbed her head. Her name is Nola. Luffy spoke seriously, and all she wants to get back to her home so you can relax. Nola won't eat any of you if you behave. The rebels were wondering why they were letting a boy with a straw hat talk them down like children on a field trip. Now then, I have one small favor to ask. Luffy said, which got the Sandians' attention. However, they will come to dread what Luffy suggested. Could you please let Nola swallow you whole? XXXXX. Deep within the forest. I can't believe that the mountain bird took off with Moss Head. I hope that a south bird doesn't get infected with his terrible sense of direction. Kuro mumbled while not really annoyed that he was now with Robin instead of Zoro. The dark-tanned women giggled even harder at the thought. Yes, I picture the poor bird walking in circles while still facing south. Robin imagined either the bird with Zoro's face or vice versa getting nowhere while trying not to twist its own head off. But she will fantasize on her own time. ESC Peely when they uncovered some old ruins. Beautiful. I suppose. Kuro could only respond to that and stuck with Robin to make sure that her observations will not be disturbed. Unfortunately, Even he couldn't count on that happening so soon. A mountain of a man landed out of nowhere and slammed his feet on some ruins, shattering them. Kuro could only tell that Robin was not happy with that act, not that the large man seemed to care. I am the commander within God's army, Yama. Ba. Yama is an obese man with a triple chin. He has a round body shape with long wavy black hair and tanned skin. He has bags under his eyes and thick lips. He wears a white toga with black vertical stripes, 3 on each side. Over his toga he has an orange sash, connected by strings, and has red lining and dark orange vertical stripes on it. Yama wears gold bracelets on both his wrist and has wings on his back. In the name of God Almighty, any and all intruders shall be killed. Shut up, a woman was having her fun and you stomped on those ruins with your heavy shoes. Kuro retorted and had his cat claw blades ready. And tell me that you do not feel the anger coming from Robin? Anyone who will bother about some stinking old stone is nothing but a freak. And you should save your breath before I kill you all. Yama definitely was a bully. And yet even he saw the darkened look on Robin's face. Kuro-kun is correct. These ruins have history, they cannot be replaced and you shattered them anyways. You will pay. Robin spoke slowly and crossed her arms to use her powers. Women can never stand up to men. Yama gathered whatever nerves has left in that massive lard he calls a body, and drew out a large sash that had 10 dials attached to one side facing away. Take this. Jurin Akusu, 10-fold axe. With agility not to be expected of his size, Yama rolled towards the pair of pirates with the grace of a gymnast. Kuro knew what those dials could down with a couple of trees were sliced and diced without even brushing against that interesting weapon. But Robin couldn't care less about that when she used her powers to reverse the dials on the sash at the moment when Yama couldn't switch them. He instead landed on a tree, feeling the power of his own dials. Robin walked over and with some extra limbs, she forced Yama's bruised face up. You destroyed what couldn't be replaced. History is in danger of being erased by selfish and ignorant people like you. I am not asking you to understand, but I love history with a passion and I hate those who disgrace it. Sorry, I am sorry. Yama tried to speak in pain with a lame apology that made even Robin cringe. I won't do it again. Too late, you have committed a terrible crime and you will be punished. Robin was in no mood for mercy. And Yama just didn't take no for an answer and actually grabbed her by the waist with his mountain-sized hands. Only for him to howl in pain when his arms were slashed terribly. I was once a captain feared on the blue sea. Kuro's voice echoed in Yama's ears, even through the pain. Until I met a young boy who bested me and yet spared me too and asked me to sail with him. And my captain's orders are to prevent harm to the fair lady, so hands off. Robin felt a little safe but had no time to relax as the job is not done yet. She created a vine out of extra arms and hands to lift Yama off the ground and got ready to swing him. Robin had to feel some of those bones break because of the sheer size and weight. Touring to Fururu. Hangu, trying to fleur. Hang, and Kuro, he appeared crunched on a nearby tree and vanished right when Yama started to roll towards a cliff like a bowling ball released by a player's grip. The mountain of a man lost his voice when thousands of more cuts appeared on his entire body. I must say that you got me an early birthday present, so thanks for the dials. Kuro appeared again and in his hand was the same sash with 10 dials attached. And Yama could only watch in horror as his own weapon was used on him yet again. And he also saw Robin with her arms still in position to attack. Dos Fururu. Karachi, Dose Fleur. Clutch. The forest echoed with the sound of bones breaking followed by a large thud. Both the pirates couldn't sense any life from their foe and started to move on. And Robin, she turned to Kuro and said, "Thank you." XXXXX above the forest this time. Let go. Goddammit. I told you that it has no food. Zoro shouted manically, hanging on for dear life as his backpack was in the claws of the giant south bird. For some reason, the massive avian creature thought that it was something to eat and tried to fly away with it, but Zoro wanted it back. Too bad that he was dragged away for the killer ride. The extra weight didn't bother the giant bird and it fell in the backpack with its beak to find it indeed bare of food. So, it abruptly released the cargo, almost as much as it seized it. Stupid bird. Zoro shouted to the top of his lungs and braced for landing with some black shining around his upper body. The fall was short and Zoro was glad to have used toughen himself when he landed into a pile of debris and rolled off onto some clouds. Damn bird. Just wait until Luffy hears about this. Zoro remembered tenderly about when he witnessed a seagull snatch away his captain like his head was food while they both were still in the East Blue. And while he groaned and tried to get to his feet, with the clouds not helping, Zoro was being watched. It was a massive creature that let out the growl of a hound dog catching the scent of an intruder, which interrupted its nap. I know holy. Yet a voice came and settled the beast. I assure you that this intruder, like the others, will fall to the might of God's army as we prepare for his prophecy to come true. With only 5 still standing, spoke to the creature and grinned with a sadistic smirk. XXXXX elsewhere. Bah! The man with a goat yell and horns let out a whimper before falling unconscious. His knocked-out body joined the cloud field littered with them, and all of them had a steaming mark somewhere on their bodies, in the form of a reindeer hoof. Speaking of whom, even your numbers didn't change a thing. Chopper reigned over his downed foes in his master form while Jin, Carol and Frank were enjoying the feeling too. But seriously, just how do they do it? How do they look like goats but talk? It may be an island in the sky, Chopper, Jin spoke up. But we technically are still in the Grand Line, so don't ask how, it's just is. And the truth hurts all the same. But seriously, you just bolted off our scout ship? I wish you will make up your mind, even if you were the captain's little brother. Jin mumbled to himself and Chopper just laughed sheepishly. Hey, look over there. Jin suddenly spotted something that grabbed his attention and he bolted towards it. His companions tried to catch up while screaming for the man-demon to slow down. That is, until they stopped to see a real change of scenery. It was where the forest eventually ended and even the ground turned back to clouds. But the vast debris littered around made it look like a swamp but without the smells and the bugs. Just what is this place? Frank asked out loud when his senses picked up someone approaching with intent to harm. And so did his companions when they also got into a defensive stance. And out of the blue came Gedatsu, the foolish priest who appeared in God's living room. And yet he got into a serious stance and glared at the Straw Hats. I guess that you are one of the strong guys, underneath the boss, right? Jin responded while Frank kept his hand on Carol's and Chopper got himself ready for a fight. That's right. I am one of God's priests. Fear me. Too bad that Gedatsu's threat had zero impact since he mistakenly spoke it in his thoughts. This was evidenced by his mouth not moving and the suspense were making the Straw Hats tense and antsy. Say something already. Jin got too impatient and a goat-like soldier came out of nowhere and shouted. Lord Gedatsu, they can't hear you if you think to yourself. If you want them to hear you then you got to speak up. And the bizarre priest gasped silently with eyes wide open. You forgot to speak. Welcome to the Grand Line everyone. Jin shouted off at how they got the most stupid foe of them all for their fight. XXXXX, damn it. Just how the hell did I lose the others after Wiper ran off on his own? There was just one more rebel in Upper Yard, one named Kamakiri. Kamakiri is a muscular, dark-skinned man with a mohawk hairstyle and a pair of big, round sunglasses with red lenses and white frame. He also has 2 big and colored earrings hanging from his ears. On his back he has a pair of classical wains. Kamakiri wears a grass skirt, similar to the ones worn by his companions, but with a red and green elaborate belt around the waist. He also sports a light red fur vest and a necklace that seems to be made of some animal's claws or teeth. Seriously, why do I have to watch his back just for it to disappear? All the more fun for me. The rebel froze and turned his head in a painfully slow motion to see the man from the throne in the clouds. God, Eneru. And I will acknowledge that you are the second biggest threat under the mortal Wiper. Because I am bored, I will give you one chance to try and kill me. And Eneru showed just how little he saw of his prey by relaxing into a nap on the tree he was resting on. But Kamakiri was not going to relax and took out his weapons. He thrusted his trusty spear through Eneru's chest but it felt like stabbing air. He then tried to go for a more lethal approach and took what looked like a dial attached to a handle-sized wooden stick. Ban burrito, burn blade. The blade was a concentrated stream of fire and heat that sliced through the trees like a hot knife through a stick of butter, and Eneru. Kamakiri also used his spear to stab Eneru in the head. But still, it was like his foe wasn't even solid. He was a logia user and at the skill level of turning intangible even in a relaxed state. I told you, you had one attempt to kill me and you failed so bad that you tried another, with no better result. Enaru mocked Kamakiri. This is the difference between I and you. Between God and an insect. This was enough to almost make the rebel lose hope and could have sworn to be staring at death in the face, only for death to stare back. Now it is time for you to die. Hey! That cut through the silence just like the burn blade did with the trees, and when both of them looked, they saw Luffy and Nami still riding on top of Noah. All three of them were staring at Enaru. Mind if we cut in? The Going Merry went along the white cloud stream without a hitch. Everyone was making sure that there was no more damage to the scout ship, especially what could ruin the repair job. Just who were those two? And I thought I will never see another man that looked like a living dumpling after that damn priest from the forest of floating spheres. Usopp asked out loud and looked to his girlfriend who was leaning over the railing. Is Umi really that cute? Not as much as you, Usopp-kun, but you should see him when he eats, Kayut chirped, and Usopp sighed while looking over the rail to witness the Sea King eat with a mouthful. One that looked delicious considering that the meal happened to be those twins who landed on the Going Merry with intent to attack. Not that they lasted even 1 second when the Straw Hats all ganged up on them. So, how is the meat, Umi-kun? The giant eel-like creature looked up and made a smile while still munching on his 2 giant dumplings. There were hardly any bones to poke at his throat and hardly anything that could get stuck in his teeth. All in all, those 2 not only looked like living dumplings but tasted the same to the tamed Sea King. Yet the best part was having a big meal and being doted by a lovely lady. Umi had this hidden soft side considering his reputation back in the East Blue. I am very impressed in you Blue Sea dwellers. The voice of an old man was heard and everyone on board turned to see a familiar old geezer clad in knight's armor. But there was something else the Straw Hat Pirates noticed. It was the little girl wrapped in the cape being used a blanket. May I ask for a small, simple favor? XXXXX elsewhere in the upper yard, it was like a war zone. Trees were split. The ground was totaled and had combatants on both fighting sides witness something they never even dream of. The rebels and goat soldiers stared down on a figure wore a fancy pair of trousers with no shirt and a string of drums the back. This could only be one person. G-God Enaru? What happened? Did he get sent through those trees and landed here? One of the soldiers spoke in disbelief along with one of the rebels. He always thought the boss was untouchable and couldn't be harmed. Then another thought hit them. God Enaru was harmed and thus, is no longer untouchable. This means that the rebels will fight even harder to get their land back. Let's finish the job while he is done. Another rebel spoke up and the others raised their weapons at God Enaru, who started to stir, hurt but still alive. The soldiers were ready to stop the rebels and the latter were about to strike God Enaru when a colossal thunderbolt shot off, firing every living being within 100 feet. Both the rebels and the soldiers were in the firing range. How dare, cough, God Enaru struggled to speak as he struggled to emerge from the ground. He even had to use his golden staff to stabilize his footing, which is an insult on its own. How dare that blue sea maggot, touch me? God Enaru's eyes were bloodshot, like a rabid dog being denied of its food. He touched me, he harmed me. I am God. He felt something clog up his throat and God Enaru coughed it out, and in his hand was blood. And gods don't bleed. No, I am God and I will make that maggot pay for this outrage. Even if I have to destroy Upper Yard, he will pay. XXXXX. Where are you? That would have been an intimating demand, by a predator who lost his prey. But the former had to Gedatsu, with his eyes rolled up with the whites showing. Did they turn invisible? On the contrary, the Straw Hats were standing in plain sight, wondering how they were going to take such a fool serious as an assassin. Lord Gedatsu, you can't see anything if you roll your eyes to the back of your head. That same soldier still played the part of the character to point out what the main character is doing, which is foolish. And Gedatsu corrected his eyes with his usual shocked face. And like most arrogant fools when they accidentally embarrass themselves, they will try to do like so. I hope your little break was long enough because I was getting tired of your hiding. And Gedatsu was interrupted when a tonfa with a large iron ball attached hit him hard on the face. Even the Buddha's patience has limits, and I have none of it left for you shithole of a fucker. Jin truly had enough of this mockery of a mortal fight with the most foolish foe he ever came across. Then his senses screamed for him to move out of the way, and when Jin did, it was like a human-sized bullet whizzed by. The other Straw Hats barely dodged it as well, which was followed by the sound of a wall shattering. The jet dial, that was undoubtedly Gedatsu's voice, and it sounded serious for once. It is powerful indeed, allowing you to move at speeds that are faster than the blink of an eye. Then the Straw Hats saw that the foolish priest had a smoking dial attached to his elbow that showed in a large hole in his sleeve. But I wish that it will not keeping tearing out my clothes. Jin was truly impressed. Now we are talking, fucker. With an excited grin, Jin got both of his makeshift tonfas ready for battle. Bring it on. XXXXX, stupid bird. I am so going to cook him raw when I get my hands on. Zoro was not happy about being dropped out of the sky by that giant south bird. Mangy bird? He couldn't put his finger on it, but there was something here that made Zoro freeze in the middle of his speech. The swordsman just got to his feet, made sure that he had his 3 swords and kept an eye out for what has gotten his senses on alert. But Zoro barely got a step in when he felt something large trying a sneak attack on him. Holy stay. Zoro turned and had a sword out just to see an oversized yellow-white dog that apparently halted in mid-punch. It amazed the swordsman that a dog could get so big, learn to stand on 2 feet, and even know how to throw a punch at all. He is loyal to a fault, but wholly needs to learn how to pick his battles better. It is as simple as the hair on your head, intruder, that you would have easily cut my steed in half. Zoro had no idea who this was. Whatever he was being praised or mocked, it was unclear. Just what the hell? The man chuckled. Took your breath away? I am honored. And the name is Ohm. He was the one who visited God Eneru with Gedatsu earlier. I am not only one of the 2 remaining priests under God Almighty. Along with that embarrassing fool, I am also a skybreeder. And holy is my pride and joy. Zoro swallowed his shock to get his head in the game. I am not here to gawk, now tell me where I am, Ohm smirked. Great, I won't waste any more time. You're in my territory, my trial, the ordeal of iron. Ohm responded and used a hand to direct attention to the sky. Once Zoro did, he nearly dropped his sword to see a cage suddenly placed around the vicinity. This cage is unlike any other you may have encountered. It may be made of clouds, but these are harder than steel, and witness what happens if you dare touch them. Ohm's sword suddenly turned to the shape of a fork, stabbed a piece of rubble to send it flying towards the cage while barely grazing Zoro. That caused the latter to see that the rubble had been sliced and diced by the cage. I sense that you still wish to fight, and the only way to escape is to win. And the white fork blade shifted back to the shape of an actual sword blade. Zoro finally got out of his stupor and sported an excited grin before placing his treasured white sword in his teeth and took out the rest of his swords, ready in his signature stance. Sounds like fun, and for once, you look like a worthy opponent. XXXXX, incredible. Kuro felt his breath taken away at the sight to behold. It wasn't long after both of them encountering that living mountain of an enemy who was hostile indeed, and his disrespect for those ruins he damaged had rubbed Robin the wrong way. It felt all the more satisfying to show him who's boss and send him rolling out of sight and maybe out of upper yard. Right now, that was pushy across more ruins that littered a field of clouds. There was even a large green stalk far into the background. It was truly like something out of an adventure novel. Robin looked like she wanted to cry out of happiness. To her, it was a real treasure trove of history and things to discover. I never dreamed to see something so beautiful. Kuro didn't want to ruin her moment, out of this polite streak growing and not wanting to face his captain about it. Come on. Maybe there is something here about the City of Gold. Kuro placed a hand gently on Robin's shoulder and that got her head back on. She nodded and both of them jumped down to the clouds, for a rather soft landing. It was a silent but pleasurable tour of the ruins until they came across a certain wall that had markings on them. Kuro pointed out, "Don't these look like that drawing that the captain drew on the day you joined?" Robin was still speechless and nodded, here hand caressing the markings as if the wall was the face of a newborn infant. Yes, they are. Robin finally spoke up and Kuro felt himself jump a little. And they are saying so much about history, about this place before it was propelled up into the sky. Robin went on and on as she read more of the Poneglyphs until she halted in her tracks. Kuro wanted to see what it was and saw that Robin's eyes were filled with shock. What is? Kuro tried to reach out to Robin again when his foot accidentally slid into the base of the wall. That didn't bruise anything, but instead, Kuro felt something that wasn't pain. It was like something responded to when his foot banged on the wall. An echo of sorts. Kuro somehow knew that something was nearby but out of sight of the naked eye. He tried with his senses and the world turned black. Black and filled with white outlines of the ruins. Kuro could see that clearly. It was like his eyes turned to that of a bat's. It was amazing to behold, and while he couldn't see the clouds in the sky, or any sky for that matter, Kuro could see that the green stalk was massive and tall. It was like an entire mountain contorted into a rope shape. Then he saw it. Underneath the field of clouds, while following the giant stalk, Kuro saw the outline of an entire city. The buildings were like the ruins, made of stone and made to be sturdy and cubical. Then Kuro's sonar vision was cut short. Yet he knew where to find the city. Kuro-san. Robin finally tore his glance from the wall and noticed her companion staring at the cloud ground. Robin. The city of the gold is down below. We are getting there, girl. Luffy rubbed tenderly on the giant snake herself. You will be home soon. Nola was more focused on slithering through the forest by the bark of the massive trees. But she still acknowledged her rider's affectionate rub by a gentle tremor. You are just too good with animals, Luffy-kun. Nami purred and tried to get a tighter grip on her boyfriend. Not that it will hurt a rubber man. How can I compete with the world's biggest snake? Maybe we can try it after everything is done. Luffy acted coy and got both his girlfriend and Nola to blush something awful. As much as they wanted to bruise him, they just couldn't focus with the fantasies entering their heads. Sorry, I have to keep this as teen-rated. But we still have to be ready to face him. As much of a self-centered fool he is, that power of his is among the most dangerous there is. Luffy got serious and so did the present company did. Nola pushed herself to get to where their common foe is. All three stared off into the distance where a giant stalk was to behold. XXXXX at the cloud swamp, scatter. That was commanded for good reason. Gedatsu is finally fighting for real, and he just sent another punch with the speed of a jet plane that shattered a cloud hill that was covered in litter, and it broke like a pile of glass to a sledgehammer. I am starting to get bored. Gedatsu spoke before activating dials on his shoes that propelled him into the air. Unless you can still keep this up, you will be killed by this. Numagumo Baga, Swamp Cloud Burger. Out of Gedatsu's palm came a really ugly cloud that descended rather quickly, except. Lord Gedatsu. I am an ally, don't aim at me. That soldier playing the straight man was the target instead of any of the Straw Hats. This caused Chopper to spring into action. As a doctor, he has this habit to help out anyone who needs help unless it is an enemy. And this soldier was hit by his own superior, who looked indifferent about it. What is that stuff? Carol was frightened. It looked like a cloud and the soldier acted like he was being eaten alive from it. Chopper tried to swat it, but the thing was like a real cloud, and touching a cloud was like catching a plume of smoke. It's a swamp cloud, as this land is a cloud swamp. One that I control is my ordeal. Gedatsu responded seriously, only that someone was shaking in frustration about it. Sure, it is a swamp, Frank said with his eyes darkened. You are sinking in it, indeed. The priest was, and as soon as Frank pointed out, Gedatsu was already up to his neck in the clouds. That really killed the mood. Fool! The priest shouted, a bit hypocritical, and emerged of the swamp at the speed of a rocket. I control this ordeal and the swamp can't kill me. Then the priest noticed Chopper doing a more physical approach to save the unfortunate soldier. Using brute strength to force the swamp cloud of the soldier's lungs. And if the swamp doesn't kill you, I will, Jetto Panchi, jet punch. The doctor looked up to the coming threat with barely any time to dodge and was about to reach for a rumble ball, maybe for his defense form. But that wasn't necessary when the punch only came in within a few inches of the target. Sorry dipshit. Jin was the one responsible and had the short end of his weapon jabbed in Gedatsu's chest, which really hurt with the speed generated by the jet dial. But hands off the captain's little brother. Luffy will go ape shit if you hurt our little doctor. Jin found it very satisfying to watch the foolish priest with a look of utter pain on his face. It was so bad that he didn't even notice the pistol pressed against his nose. This is gonna hurt, punk. Frank smiled sadistically and shot a round of his Bakuden no Iki no Dongan. Bomb breath bullets. The sound of bones breaking was heard yet again. And still, before the priest could respond, someone slammed a leg down on his head. This is for hurting our cute little doctor. Carol felt like old times, using his powers to manipulate her weight to float then crush. Sen Kuro Ramu Puresu, 1,000-kilo press. Normally she will go for her max of 10,000 kilograms, but Carol wanted to save the finishing blow for Chopper, so she settled for a kick 10 times lighter. It didn't take any longer for Gedatsu to finally get his bearing together. I am going to kill you for this insolence. The priest suddenly took off from Jin's proximity. All of you will suffocate in the name of WHAA. Suddenly, Gedatsu felt his flight off and started to soar irregularly. What the hell is going? And while he was disorientated from the experience, Gedatsu then spotted what was the cause. Jin had stolen one of his boots with the dials on. Damn you. And when Gedatsu tried to stable himself, a shadow had covered him. No, damn you. It was Chopper, in his master form. You're the most pathetic enemy I have ever faced, and nearly killing one of your own men was bad enough. But as a doctor, I can never forgive anyone who will strike a man who can't fight back. Gedatsu was not only frightened by Chopper's appearance, but there was something in the latter's eyes that scared the former witless. You will pay for that. Sakuraro Zudo Saperaru, Sakura Rose Hoof Spiral. Chopper not only stayed airborne for the whole time but also spun a 180 and landed a spiral kick, landing on the priest's back. The sound of bones snapping echoed on the cloud swamp, and the witnesses cringe. Yet the priest landed rather softly into the cloud, but he was as stiff as a bone, not going to be moving anytime soon. Afterwards, for an idiot, he sure has quite the equipment. He won't notice it's missing if he can't notice that he talks through his lips or when his eyes are facing the back of his head. Jin was having a little too much fun looting the downed priest. Thankfully Frank shielded Carol's eyes when the man-demon started to tear off the ugly underpants. Glad you think so, sir. That unnamed soldier decided that it wasn't worth sticking with a man that is somehow an idiot and a tyrant at the same time. He settled for the simple name, Kumo, and wanted to be of a help to the Straw Hats. Back in the day, even sailors joined pirates when the grass looks greener on the other side of the fence. Now then, those are the jet dials, and the ones on the boots are milky dials. They can produce the same type of cloud that we are standing on. Jin heard that and snatched the dials off the boots, the one he already had in his hand and the one still on the priest's foot. He gave one of them a slight press and a cloud big enough for a human infant came out. It was blown away by a stray gust. Jin tired it again, but with a press hold and a stream of clouds came out. Sweet. And these? Jin tucked away the milky dials and pointed to the ones he found in the gloves. Swamp dials. Kumo answered with a pinch of venom. Anyone who nearly suffocated on a swamp cloud would be bitter. Those are similar to the milky dials, only they make swamp clouds that are much heavier, and since they are clouds, it is harder to get off. The Straw Hats looked at each other and nodded. They are going to keep these out of sight from Kumo. They may be pirates, but they learned better from their captain to be respectful with their new comrades. And that is everything, Jin said, and just as he released his grip on the priest, the body sank completely into the swamp. They were silent for a moment before the realization hit them. Their foe fell through the clouds and is probably falling 10,000 feet to the surface. That is going to be one mean crash, not that it matters anymore. Let's go and see if we can find the others. And just like that, Jin led the gang and their new friend away from the swamp. They are sure to forget about the fate of their foolish foe. Everyone else is sure to do so, which is a bit sad. XXXXX at the ruins closed off by a cloud cage. Holy, punch to the right. Ohm commanded his steed and the giant dog did so. Zoro was just too fast to be hit that way. Only that the swordsman jumped to DK. Good boy. I've got him. The priest already sensed that Gedatsu had fallen but never cared for any of his fellow priests, not even as rivals but annoyances with the same title. So, his battle focus didn't even twitch. He just followed Zoro and moved his giant sword as if a whip. Zoro saw it coming and got ready to counterattack until the end of that strange weapon turned into a hammer and sent the swordsman into a pile of ruins. It was only a moment when Zoro got out, bruised and even more angry. I'm impressed a bit, you're tougher than you look. Ohm still stood casually in front of his foe, not even a smidge of dirt on himself. Just what the hell is that thing you are swinging around like a bandit's club? Zoro had already lost his cool after having to put up with the giant dog and a priest whose weapon just can't stay one shape for 5 minutes. My weapon is an iron cloud. And clouds don't stay the same shape, and thus my sword does not limit to blades. Calmly explained in a tone that was rubbing in Zoro's face. Then the priest stabbed forward his weapon that transformed into a giant fork that forced Zoro to use his 2 main blades to block it by the 2 spaces between the prongs. Yet the swordsman couldn't even hold his ground with the block and was sent into an old wall. Surely you can do better. Talked Zoro down with sadism and disappointment. You want better, Zoro huffed, straining his arms to keep the middle prong from piercing his chest. But he was able to turn his arms black with haki, causing them to budge a bit, and with that boost of strength, the swordsman was able to break free from the iron cloud fork by breaking the prongs. Yet Zoro was not done yet. Onigiri, demon cutter. Aizen Baku. Aizen back, commanded of his sword calmly, and the iron cloud took the attack while pushing Zoro back again. Interesting. That somehow seems related to our mantra. Too bad that you need more tricks if you still want to win. Zoro suffered no damage but never did his opponent. I bet that you want the Aizen dial in my sword that is truly responsible for the ever-changing shape of my blade. There are barely any other Aizen dials in existence. I should call myself lucky. Luck means nothing in a battle, only power and skill and instinct. Zoro retorted. I don't have time to waste believing in luck. The swordsman got the iron cloud of him, but this time, Zoro stepped on top of the block. Sorry, but this match is. With a sadistic smirk on his mouth, Zoro vanished from his spot. Finally lost his cool, and before he could even twitch, his chest burst open with blood. Over. Gritted his teeth at the pain and humiliation. Zoro moved at a speed that the former could see but couldn't bring himself to dodge fast enough. The priest turned painfully slow to where his foe was, and tried to raise his sword at Zoro. Yet, the white iron cloud suddenly left the handle and rose as a harmless regular cloud. Watched in horror, then he spotted what caused this. The opposite end of the handle had been sliced in half, empty as an old seashell. Having a rare dial made you feel lucky. Zoro spoke again while couldn't do more than shake in his stance. So, I guess that I am too. In his hand, the priest saw what could be the Aizen dial in Zoro's hand. So, thanks, idiot priest. With that said, had finally fallen. The last of the priests to lose to the intruders. Then a shadow emerged over Zoro, and the swordsman realized that he nearly forgotten about the giant yellow dog. He braced for another battle when, holy, bang your head and pass out. And before Zoro knew it, the giant dog did just that. Holy was just too well trained. He followed orders from anyone that gave the command. And yet Zoro did not expect to see one of the goat soldiers run up beside his crewmates. He had nothing else to say about, this place is fucking mad. All before a yet larger shadow was cast, this time covering everyone present. All of them had expressions of silent shock. XXXXX with Kuro and Robin. I seriously didn't make these to be used like this. Kuro grumbled as he watched Robin use his cat claws to cut out cubes of the clouds just for her sprouted arms to scoop out of the hole they were already deep in. Will you hurry it up? There is one more for you to pitch in instead of complaining. Robin retorted and just plain ignored her companion's moans. Kuro eventually took the other glove with claws and got to dig deeper. And it wasn't long until he felt the ground give away and felt like an opening. Robin spotted it and helped her companion expand the opening to fit them both while she commanded her sprouted arms to throw down her pack. Kuro just took back his cat claws and chanted to himself that they were not used as shovels. Robin just took in how they found what seems to be some room with clouds decorating the walls. Yet there was still one light at the end of the tunnel to check out. All thought was lost and all breath was taken away when the two went through the second opening, which was some kind of exit. And they left some kind of temple into a city. That's it. That is what I saw back up. Kuro felt genuinely excited. Could this be the city of gold? Indeed, mortals. A man's voice had cut through them worse than a spike to the chest. Turning back swiftly, both pirates saw God Eneru rest on top of the building while eating an apple rather bitterly. Kuro even noticed a faint outline of a fist on the check. I have already discovered it when I ascended to my throne, but alas, there was no gold to be found. Just stones with gibberish of maggots, no gold. Kuro said nothing, All he could do is sense that Eneru's power is not to be trifled with. He was more than a man without a shirt and the longest earlobes ever seen. Yet in this sense of caution was the feeling of surety that their captain, their strongest member, can still take one god Eneru. It is still a bit curious, I am still sensing signatures disappearing. God Eneru then spoke while still taking a bite out of his apple. And I don't sense any of the rebels who wish to steal my throne. I wonder why. There is this feeling at the back of my head telling me that there is danger nearby. It is wise, when all else fails, to trust one's instincts, and if Eneru did, he would have lasted longer. Hello Eneru. Yet another voice had broke the ice, and it was noted that God Eneru had shivered a little bit. All three of them turned to see a man in a pirate captain's cloak, his girl with her head behind his shoulder, both on top of the largest snake ever seen. Nola is home, so I must ask that you leave her house. XXXXX. As pirate captain and tyrant god stare themselves down, the Going Merry finally arrived back at Angel Beach. Amazingly, the main ship of the Straw Hats, the King's Gourd, was untouched. It's gone fall. One of the inhabitants of the town, that which is named Angel Beach, shouted out while a crowd was rushing to the beach line. With the blue sea dwellers, and that little girl is dressed a lot like the rebels. I just saw a big fish hide behind the vessel to be sacrificed. The Straw Hats ignored the cries from the crowd and moved their scout ship next to their main ship. What a crowd! I am surprised that Isa is still asleep. Usopp committed on the circumstances while carrying the young girl that was brought to them by Gon Fall. She was in bad shape and Kaya wasted no time treating her until she was at least stable and sleeping. Whether it was Usopp trying to be tough or was a sucker for his girlfriend, he still was the one to carry the girl. When they asked her for a name, the girl always chanted, Isa, before nodding off. Just make sure that she is comfy. Kaya responded. She is so small that a jolt will dislocate something like a bone or an organ. I suggest that you take good care of her. As a doctor, her patient always came first. Kaya felt proud to be taking control of a doctor's priorities while worried that it might prove to be rude to her boyfriend. Okay Kaya-chan. I will definitely tea they would. To prove his point, Usopp managed to unconsciously catch a fresh tomato that was aimed at Isa. This got everyone else on guard. Gon Fall was not happy about one bit. She is a little girl. Why are you treating her like a criminal? For an old man, he certainly has spunk and more endurance than most of his age. She is with the rebels. The one who threw the fruit aiming at Isa was a little boy who couldn't speak for himself. His father did. Just being here is enough for God Almighty to pass his judgment on us. So be it. Gon Fall responded indifferently. Both he and Usopp exchanged a glance eye to eye before. We refused to bow down to a fraud of a god. The two screamed straight to the sky and the crowds panicked. They rushed and trampled over themselves for shelter and to hide from whatever is to come instantly. Yet, nothing happened. For one of those moments that feel like forever, not even crickets chirping was heard. Now that we have got your attention, Alvida had the duty of official first mate and took charge of the situation. We will like some confiscation for the trouble you gave us, and our sniper has just the thing to win you over. Thankfully that dirty, hidden meaning just flew everyone's head, or else Alvida just lost Usopp a month of cuddling. Back at the buried city, her house, Eneru spoke painfully slow. You mortal must be mentally retarded. The Lord of the Sky has no house, and this is nobody's house. And I will not leave on the orders of a maggot. Eneru tried to act like his authority was offended, yet he still shivered the longer he stared at Luffy's emotionless expression. Luffy then shifted his eyes to Nola, spoke not a word, but Nami and the giant snake understood. The silence was broken by a loud and disturbing snap, followed by the sound of broken bones and a body hitting a stone floor. Sorry about Robin. I can't protect this city from what is to come. Just go north and give it a ring. Luffy spoke to his latest crewmate and jumped down to where God Eneru landed, twitching on the ground. It hurts a lot, looking and moving like a lot like a maggot, right? All this mockery made Eneru look like he was losing his sanity. And yet Luffy wasn't finished. There is one being that not even God can kill. If God can't kill, he fears. And I am the one you can't kill. I am the one you fear. As God Eneru struggled to get to his feet, Luffy walked over with steam emitted from his arms. If you are God, Luffy drew both blades to behold. Then I'm the devil, and for once, Eneru felt fear as he gazed upon his foe who showed a terrifying aura. That of a featureless silhouette that had the evilest grin with the emptiest pair of eyes Eneru had ever gazed upon. Speechless, I am flattered, Luffy stated and smirked when Eneru finally got back to his feet, with the bruise still visible, so much that looks like it hurts. It amused the pirate captain to see his foe try to avoid using a golden bow staff as a walking cane, to use it as a weapon instead. He chuckled as he took out his own weapons, the katana Reimei Atami, Dawn Pain, and the rapier Uedoku Toge, Toxic Thorn. Well, I don't have all day. Silence. Eneru screamed until blood clotted in his throat, making him cough it all out. I have heard enough. For this insolence, I will give you a painful death that can only be done by God. Luffy wasn't too worried since the threat was lamed by another coughing fit. Puny God. Luffy felt like someone else said it to an actual god, only green-skinned and weighted several more tons in muscle. I am too obvious. We have wasted enough time. Kuro Barreto, Black Bullet, tossing his katana in the air for a bit. Luffy's arm stretched hundreds of meters and back almost instantly, landing a mean punch to Eneru's chest. And he hardened his fist for more damage. Once Eneru was lifted off the ground from the impact, Luffy caught Reimei Atami like a pro. Supuritochin no Atami, split chin pain. Eneru felt a sword attack aimed with the intention of cutting him in half, and this time, he was able to block it with his staff. Okay, now I am impressed, Eneru. Luffy didn't even look annoyed that his move was blocked. Not even when Eneru called upon his powers to turn into a thunderbolt to escape the block hold. Yes, I actually feel that, and it cleared my airways. Eneru was wondering why he was being so casual with a man from the sea below that has been making a mockery out of him. And I can tell that I need to fight blade with blade. Goromu Padoringu. Loomis Forge. After a light show of lightning sparks, Eneru's golden staff morphed into a fancy-looking trident. And I almost thought that you used that thing to show off. Luffy smirked. Let's see the distance between the two of us. Luffy vanished, and yet Eneru could still see him coming and blocked another katana slice. This time, when they broke off, both fighters started a simple clash off swords versus trident. It started light until Eneru found himself hard-pressed to keep up while Luffy remained cool and hardly moved from his position as his arms moved his blades so fast that they were practically invisible. Then Eneru halted them both with his prongs before twirling his weapon, using the blunt end to put the swords out of the way for a swift stab to the chest. One that didn't even leave a bruise. Luffy's smirk only grew to see Eneru in shock once again, seeing the former skin turn black again that, somehow, blocked the trident prongs. To a normal man, you are invincible. To the monsters down below in the area that is called the New World, you are weakling with a god complex that only hit the jackpot. Luffy took this chance to talk down Eneru yet again, whom was still trying to comprehend this. I intend to one day rule over these monsters. They will respect your power and nothing more. Luffy used his katana for another simple swipe attack, and when Eneru's tried to block with just his reflexes, the latter's weapon failed this time. This was just adding fuel to the fire, which led to the god actually lowering his guard. A chance that Luffy took to run his rapier through the spleen. To top it off, Luffy painfully pulled out his weapon and even kicked Eneru away with his foot on the wound. You can let him out now, girl. In a split second, someone else attacked Eneru. First a kick to the chest, and a second to the neck while Eneru was still airborne. A third one jabbed in the chest again, and Eneru skipped along the ground like the ragdoll he was feeling like. The attacker turned out to be Wiper, and he had both a smirk and a scowl on his face. Don't get full of yourself, boy. Wiper said to Luffy, looking at the sight with enjoyment. I still ought to burn your face off for what you did back there, and I don't care for your reasons. Fair enough. Luffy uttered those two words right before the sky was filled with the most wonderful and mysterious sound any of them had ever heard. It was similar to an ancient bell. XXXXX earlier, Robin and Kuro went north of the city on the captain's orders. It was quite the trek until they saw something in the distance. Once they got there, it was truly a stunning sight. When Luffy said to give it a ring, the Straw Hats never understood it until now. What was up north was a giant golden bell, and it rested on a pedestal made of gold as well. Well, I get it that Luffy told us to give it a ring, so I guess we better Kuro remarked, and only took a step when he realized that Robin hadn't even taken a breath in since they came across this amazing sight. And he doubted it was just the bell that took her breath away. "Robin? Look." She spoke almost like a robot and pointed straight ahead, at the base of the bell. When Kuro followed her finger, he was surprised yet again. The base had Ponajolf writing on it. Those who made this bell were also part of the Forgotten Tribe, who lived during the Void Century and have died off when that century ended. They were the ones who created the written language. I guess that they had gold to spare to make something like this. Kuro had to make a comment on how an entire bell and pedestal was made purely with gold, which could say something about the ones who created. My best guess is that when the upper yard was sent up here, the bell was dislodged and landed separately from the rest of the continent. Kuro then turned back to Robin. "So, what did they say?" "That the rebels were entrusted with keeping a word to themselves, even to the end of time. Once that promise has been fulfilled, they were allowed to live their lives, without anything for them to hide anymore." Robin answered, talking like she was in a trance. Those words were almost the voice of a god speaking to his people of a task that he trusted them to perform, promising good fortune if completed. "Hey Robin, look over there." Kuro spoke up and actually got the tanned woman's attention. He was pointing at the base, around the left corner. "I know those words were not part of the original design." Robin narrowed her eyes and noticed that it was similar letters that were written similar to graffiti. A message made at a different time. When she read it, Robin felt like her heart trying to jump out of her chest. "This is impossible." Kuro was startled to see the stoic as a Lord Robin lose her cool from just reading a message. "Easy, easy Robin." Rather than hold her by the arms, Kuro stabilized Robin by the shoulders. "Please tell me what it says. You look like it is a threat from a demon." Robin took a deep breath and relaxed a bit. "Sorry Kuro, it was just a bit too much to wrap my head around." She relaxed a bit more with a few more deep breaths. "It was a message. Signed by Goldie Roger." Now Kuro felt like a pane of glass that cracked a bit. Our captain was right. The Pirate King made it to Sky Island. With this in mind, they almost forgot about ringing the giant bell. XXXXX back in the ruins. "So, the devil has sent one of his underlings to fight in his place?" Eneru didn't care for the wounds anymore, they were just distractions. Especially the sound of the bell, that meant nothing to this tyrant. "Don't try to act like you don't serve him, you're just an ant compared to him." Wiper tried not to let Eneru's taunt get under his skin, but Luffy's smirk was not helping. "I am flattered, but please don't pick on my friend. He is only doing what you will if the roles were reversed. His ancestors have been fighting for their land as soon as they were shot up here. They just want their land back, like Calgara died fighting for." Wiper lost his scowl and widened his eyes at Luffy. Calgara was the direct ancestor to the former, where most suspect to be a source to his natural strength. Wiper wanted to know how an idiot-looking blue sea dweller knew that. "Died" fig a delirious tone, like that of a madman. "Well, he can die all the same, right now." He turned his right arm into a thunderbolt, aiming at Wiper. Instantly, both of his enemies were alit with lightning. But the feeling of satisfaction only lasted 5 seconds when the dust cleared to show them both unscratched. Wiper looked as shocked and confused as Eneru, while Luffy's smirk was still sticking, and the latter had his hand on Wiper's shoulder. "Cool, isn't it?" Luffy said to Wiper. What to see more? Somehow, he was able to make it not sound seductive, more like general temptation. Give him a good punch. While not taking a step. And while Wiper wanted to say that it was impossible, he still tried it and was shocked at the result. Like the Straw Hat Captain, Wiper's arm stretched by several meters and hit Eneru right on the face. It's something not like anything other, eh? You are one fucking crazy blue sea dweller. Wiper could only respond, and Luffy took it as a compliment. Erg, Eneru just won't stay down, even after going through the meat grinder. It may be his pride as a logia user, or his delusion of being an untouchable god, or both, that is doing this. Mortals will pay F for this. Luffy and Wiper said nothing. They merely glared upon the downed form of their common enemy. Wiper will admit to have dreamed of seeing the tyrant of a god struggling to get to his feet, blood dripping from his busted lips and even a fist print or two showing on the flesh. Now, he feels both satisfied and cheated. First for seeing that dream come to life, and the second for how he only gave Eneru a slap on the cheek compared to how Luffy beat down on him. Luffy then left off his grip on Wiper's shoulder and walked in front of Eneru, still shaking and struggling until the former grinned while the latter on the ground looked like his soul was shattering. "You can feel it, right, God? They found it." Eneru found it hard to growl, no matter how much he wanted to for Luffy's tuint. "And guess what? It belongs to the people now. Not that they wanted such an ugly thing, so they are giving it to us." Eneru was left with nothing. No kingdom, no army, no subjects, and not even his masterpiece. He felt a lone tear drip down his cheek right before the strongest uppercut was heard, with his chin bones breaking. The disgraced tyrant could only stare into the eyes of his mortal enemy, truly as a dangerous and frightening like a devil. And time stopped when Eneru saw something that could only be the killing blow. This was the last of Eneru, and the tyrant knew it to the very end. Game over. Luffy's arm retraced and stretched at the speed of sound, which was followed by the sickening sound of a neck breaking. Those who had their eyes on Eneru had seen the god go limp when that punch hit straight on the neckline, shattering the point where the head is connected to the body. And it echoed through the land along with the ring of the bell that never stopped the whole time. Yet the limp body did not make a sound when it fell to the ground, similar to a sack of potatoes. Wiper couldn't believe it. The day was finally here. He and his kin had been one edge with the Skypans for 400 years, while they only lived under fear and tyranny for 6 years when Eneru took over. Still, it felt like that short era of terror had ended at last when the god was slain by the devil. Luffy, Wiper felt his heart jump a little to hear the voice of a concerned woman, turning to see the navigator look over the savior himself. Luffy had not moved when Eneru's body landed unceremoniously to the side. He only gazed to the other side of his body until he lifted his left arm to reveal something shocking. It was made almost entirely out of thunder. It was late evening when everyone in the heavens had gathered to celebrate their freedom from Eneru's tyranny and hearing the Song of the Island for the first time in 400 years. The rebels were glad to have their ancestral homeland back, but while the thought had come to mind to keep it all to themselves, they were too tired of fighting to consider. The residents from Angel Beach were grateful to party on the Holy Vareth. "I still can't believe it." A rebel by the name of Lackey spoke what was on her mind. How was that boy with the hat able to toy with Eneru and even kill him with his bare hands, after how we have tried and failed to even touch him? Wiper, the rebel leader, just relaxed and nibbled on a meat stick that was made by the boy's cook. Even he had to admit that it was tasty. He called it a power that is found in all living beings. Wiper finally responded after taking a good swallow. One that Mantra is part of, and there is a power that allows one to hit even a logia user. Lackey widened her eyes. "Can we learn it?" Wiper felt a smirk reach his lips when she almost shook him by the shoulders to get an answer. The boy with the hat and his gang don't plan to stay for long. They could only teach us so much, but you will have to wait a bit. Wiper responded, and to show what he meant in that last part, he pointed off in the distance. Lackey followed his finger to see the man in question, in good company to say the least. Luffy was dining with Nami, getting comfy on his chest while them both were resting on Nola. For an honorable mention, that giant bird from the altar was also resting nearby after being treated by Chopper. I still say the Blue Sea Dweller is the craziest I ever meet. Who else could find out that the Lord of the Sky is actually female and just wanted her old home back? I am almost surprised to see that you are being so calm about it. Usually you have something to be mad about. Lackey said honestly, and Wiper wanted to scowl at least, but just released a breath. Even I get tired of being angry, and I still feel a bit tired from seeing one craziness after another. Wiper responded and reached for another meat stick. They were too good, and the wildcard wishes to admit it. XXXXX. The next morning after the party, what do you know? Luffy asked while the rest of his crew were speechless. They were gazing upon the repaired King's Gourd. Only it was much, much bigger. It was easily twice as big, much thrice. The overall design was barely any different, the measurements and positions were adjusted to the new size. The body of the ship seemed to be double-decked, and there was a third mast complete with a functioning sail that bore their Jolly Roger. You people sure work fast. Luffy turned to the crowd on Angel Beach. I don't know, Luffy-kun. Nami mused. She would rather just nod off on her boyfriend's shoulder. Sure, there is a lot of space to spare, but a bigger ship is an easier target. Just how will all of us even protect something that is so much bigger than all of us? We will just have to adjust the best way we can, Nami-chan. Luffy responded and pointed out the crew doing their little self-tours at their own pace. It is still generous of the locals to not only fix and upgrade our ship but also give up most of their dials. I guess that even rubber bands can make miracles. Nami started to giggle and smile, which made her shine much more than her uneasy frown. It was so amusing to see the locals who live in the sky and use seashells for everyday life get on rubber bands like the rarest thing in the world. Nami added her own 2 cents and Luffy just chuckled along. Come on. We need to get ready to leave for the ocean or else we will lose where the log post points. Nami would care about such details if she wasn't snuggling in her boyfriend's warmth. And Luffy felt a pleasant tingle while he rubbed her head as if an actual house cat. Fine. Lead the way, my king, XXXXX. A couple of days later. Do you really have to leave? Konus was along the edge of the Sky Island along with her father and her Skyfox pet. Gonfall was also there with his faithful companion, the pink bird that can transform into a lackluster Pegasus. We were just getting to know each other, especially after how you freed us from tyranny. Thanks, Konus, we really appreciate that. Luffy said while leaning over the railing. But we are still sailors, free sailors that are more often than not called pirates. And our compass will not wait for us when it points to the next island. We need to be on the blue sea before we lose our place. It was a real petty and even more since they had to lose the other Skypans and the rebels to avoid any crowd seeing them off. Besides, the new and improved King's Gourd is a big bonus to seeing Sky Island, and we have that big bad boy to take with us. Luffy used his thumb to point to the rather large column that is truly made of pure gold. It was so massive that the Skypans had to make another vessel to carry with a chain keeping it attached to the King's Gourd. If you will gaze at the bottom of the vessel whenever a wave comes to shift it up a bit, there are dozens of shells littering on the bottom. But will your girl be okay? Konus asked with actually concern while Luffy wasn't too worried about Nami. To an innocent young woman, the navigator looked brain dead as Nami hadn't even twitched to the side breeze while napping on Luffy's shoulder. But Konus's father and Gonfall had a good idea on what happened. They praised the wonders of youth and to Luffy for his skills with his woman. Luffy just gave a grin that confirmed what the adults thought. I am sure Konus, Nami still feels like queen of the world to witness more gold than several kings put together. Since I got it for her, she thanked me last night. Luffy responded and Nami got a smile as big as a Cheshire cat's while her cheeks were almost neon red. The adult males also felt their faces get red when their imaginations ran wild to picture the pleasurable night between the pirate captain and his girl. Too bad that the stinking bird had to wake us up late last night. Luffy scowled and bluntly pointed to the south bird chained up again but also with its beak sealed. The little avian creature's certainty got on everyone's bad side when scowls also appeared on their faces. Okay, you are almost at the exit. Konus saw something worth cheering up and pointed out that the cloud stream was leading the vessels. Everyone saw it and hurried over to the side where they can see their friends on the shoreline and said their farewells. Up until Konus shouted, and beware of the drop. The what? XXXXX while everyone was screaming so loud that it will be like trying to hear a dog whistle, and staying on the deck was just as easy. But Luffy was able to get himself together to hold on to Nami and make his way to where the helm is. Okay everyone. Luffy got everyone's attention. If this is done right, we can save ourselves, our ships and our loot. Try to hold on to the ship where you won't land hard and wish us luck. They only had a second until the larger than before King's Gourd slowed down suddenly and almost to a stop. Most were able to grasp the mast so that they won't hit the flooring, yet the others could only hang on to the former. After getting over what must be a killer landing, the crew wondered what happened. Hey! Look at that! A voice from the railing shouted, and when eyes looked at the belly of the ship, they saw it littered with dials just like the vessel carrying their gold. And half of these dials were going off like rocket jets. Must be what is slowing the vessels to a slow descent. Thank God. I am glad that I checked them out before we left Sky Island. Luffy said while wiping off some sweat from his forehead. Had them fail, we were goners. The crew didn't care if that was a joke or not, they were glad to not crash into the ocean. Then again. Just how did you get so many dials? Did those people from up there really gave up so many just for our ship? Kuro asked to be sure in. It was a cinch. I just borrowed Usopp's old collection of rubber bands. Nothing much more needed to be said. There were just a lot of bouncing eyebrows sent the sniper's way. Usopp chuckled nervously and shrugged his shoulders. I was wondering what to do with those old things until Luffy asked if he could have them. Usopp could have rambled on until Kaya gave him a good kiss on the cheek. That got his brain to shut down for only a bit. Then a thought got it to work. So what happened to Umi? Before anyone could respond, a large door at the base opened. Out came a certain large sea snake, panting like he was having a heart attack. Luffy walked over with a concerned yet amused expression. "Hey there boy, I promise you. That is the last time we are going above sea level," the captain said to the Sea King, who only rolled around in the seawater and gave an expression that said, you better, he says. Chopper translated. He is grateful that this new ship has a compartment room just for him. The crew nodded along. A happy Sea King is a friend while an angry one is a predator. "Now then everyone," Luffy announced, "one more reminder before you go to bed and expect clouds again. We are back in the Grand Line. Hope you enjoyed our little vacation, because it is time to get back to work." As much as they wanted to grumble, the captain was only breaking this to get the gears turning again. "Next, a bit of big news on a present I got for my girl Nami." Turning to the woman in question, "Care to show off a bit?" Nami's Cheshire smile grew back and, much to shock of everyone present, she turned into a thunderbolt that bounced on and off the deck. It even jumped to hop skip on the ocean surface. In case you blinked, Nami reappeared on the railing, in the stance of feral cat enjoying the looks on the crew. "My man has gotten his hands on the Guro Guro no mi. Rumble rumble fruit. And, after a little persuasion, and a bit of arguing, he gave the fruit for me to devour." No one wanted to hear more, so they asked for no more. "If there are any more questions, it is time to set sail." Luffy spoke up. "You probably already guessed that the next place of interest will be the Carpenter Haven, Water 7. The best part is that even pirates are allowed to enter as customers as long as they behave. We need to find someone there that can fully upgrade our ship to make it more suitable for the new world. After all, bigger is not always better." The crew agreed, and even Usopp did, with the promise that the Going Merry stays as she is. "But before we do, there's a little something that had to wait until the excitement was over." "Just a moment," Luffy said, and went through one of the doors, leaving his crew wondering what he was talking about. But they didn't have to wait long until Luffy came with what seems to be an ordinarily standard barrel. "Now," Luffy spoke up suddenly, "unless you show yourself or I will have to get rough and pull you out myself. And trust me, biting back is a bad idea." Luffy then put the barrel on its side until it started to tumble a bit. The lid then fell off, and when the crew tried to look inside, they flinched. It was the little girl from the rebels, Isa. Hi everyone.